The Book of Revelation, a profound and enigmatic work, was written by John during a period of intense persecution and oppression for Christians. This historical context, marked by tribulations and challenges, serves as an essential backdrop to understand the messages contained in the letters to the 7 churches. John's writing is not merely a record of visions but an invitation to awaken to a higher consciousness, a call to transcend suffering and the limitations of the material world. John presents us with a powerful vision of a glorified Christ that transcends the conventional images we have of Jesus. This vision is not just a representation of the external Christ but a manifestation of the universal consciousness that dwells within each of us. By describing the majesty and authority of Christ, John invites us to recognize this divine presence within ourselves. It is a reminder that, even in the midst of adversity, we are invited to connect with this essence, to transcend the ego, and to open ourselves to the true reality of being. The letters to the 7 churches are not mere instructions but profound messages that speak directly to the heart of the human experience. The letter to the Church of Ephesus, for instance, calls us to return to our first love. In a world filled with distractions and superficialities, this message resonates strongly. Often, we get lost in worldly obligations and concerns, distancing ourselves from the spiritual connection that nurtures us. The invitation is clear: it is time to revitalize our relationship with the divine, to reclaim the depth of our spirituality. In the search for spiritual authenticity, the letter to Ephesus prompts us to reflect on what truly matters. The first love is that pure state of surrender and devotion where consciousness unites with the greater good. It is a love that is not limited to religious practices but manifests in every action and thought. As we cultivate this connection, we begin to realize that true spirituality is not an isolated act but a way of being that permeates all aspects of life. The message to the Church of Smyrna takes us to a space of deep acceptance. Suffering, often seen as an enemy, is presented here as a catalyst for transformation. When we face difficulties, we have the opportunity to look within and recognize the strength that resides in us. Accepting suffering does not mean succumbing to it but rather using this experience as a springboard for spiritual growth. It is in adversity that we are shaped, that our values are tested, and that we have the chance to connect more deeply with our essence. This perspective is essential in a world that seeks to avoid pain at all costs. True enlightenment arises when we learn to integrate these experiences, when we embrace both light and shadow. The letters to Pergamum and Thyatira remind us that the spiritual journey is not without challenges. We must confront the forces that pull us away from the truth, that keep us trapped in the illusions of the ego. The integration of the shadow is a crucial step in this process. By recognizing and welcoming it, we find a path to true freedom. As we reflect on the letter to the Church of Sardis, we are confronted with the idea of authenticity. Sardis represents those who appear to be alive but are spiritually dead. This duality leads us to question: are we truly living according to our deepest values? Spiritual authenticity is not just a matter of appearance but involves a genuine commitment to the truth that resides within us. Life is a constant invitation to be true to ourselves and others, to live in a way that reflects the essence of who we are. Philadelphia and Laodicea bring similar messages, each challenging us to cultivate authenticity in our spiritual journey. The letter to Philadelphia reminds us of the importance of perseverance and faith, even in the face of difficulties. Authenticity is not about being perfect but about being real. Laodicea, on the other hand, warns us of the trap of complacency. Being lukewarm in our faith is an invitation to reflect: are we living in a vibrant and passionate way, or are we merely existing? Authenticity involves a continuous commitment to seek the truth, to be present in the moment, and to respond to the demands of the heart. The letters to the 7 churches, therefore, are not just messages from the past but profound reflections on our contemporary spiritual journey. They invite us to awaken consciousness, to recognize the presence of the inner Christ, and to cultivate a genuine love that transcends the superficialities of life. In a world saturated with distractions, these messages challenge us to return to our first love, to accept suffering as a path to transformation, and to integrate our shadows to find the true light. As we advance on this journey of self-discovery and authenticity, we are invited to change our perception of life, to embrace the present, and to recognize that each moment is a unique opportunity for spiritual growth. The next step will take us to explore the vision of the glorified Christ, an invitation to look beyond the limitations of the ego and connect with the divine essence that resides within each of us. It is in this sacred space that we can truly find the peace and fulfillment we seek. In the vastness of the human experience, there is a constant invitation to transcend the surface of life and dive into the depths of being. The Book of Revelation, written by John, emerges as a beacon in the darkness, offering glimpses of a higher reality, a reality that transcends time and space. Amid persecution and tribulation, the message of the glorified Christ is revealed, not just as a distant figure but as the universal essence that resides within each of us. The vision of the glorified Christ that John describes is indeed a manifestation of elevated consciousness, a symbol of the majesty and authority that permeates all creation. When John contemplates this vision, he is immediately transported to a state of deep reverence and awe. This image is not just a representation of a divine being but a call for us to recognize the inner Christ that dwells in our being. It is an invitation to look beyond the limitations of the ego and the narratives we build around ourselves. We, like John, are invited to open our eyes to the greatness that already resides within us. In this context, the presence of the glorified Christ speaks to us about the importance of being fully aware of the present moment. In a world filled with distractions and worries, we often get lost in thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future. The vision of Christ reminds us that true life and true consciousness are anchored in the now. The majesty of the glorified Christ is an invitation to reconnect with our divine essence, to awaken from the illusion of separation, and to recognize that life unfolds in the eternal now. As John receives the letters addressed to the 7 churches, we are confronted with deep messages that resonate with our own spiritual journey. The letter to the Church of Ephesus, for example, exhorts us to return to our first love. This call to awaken consciousness invites us to reflect, what has drawn us away from our purest spiritual connection? In the whirlwind of modern life, it is easy to get lost in obligations and distractions, forgetting the simplicity and depth of divine love. The first love is that state of being in which we feel God's presence in everything and everyone. It is a state of surrender and trust, where we allow ourselves to be guided by the wisdom of the heart. The message to the Church of Smyrna, on the other hand, speaks of the transformation that arises through suffering. Pain and difficulty are inevitable in the human journey, but we are often tempted to avoid or fight against them. However, when we look at suffering as a catalyst for spiritual growth, we begin to understand that each challenge is an opportunity to deepen our connection with the divine. Accepting suffering does not mean resigning ourselves to it but recognizing it as an essential part of the life experience. It is through pain that we are often forced to turn inward, to seek the light that shines within us. The letters to Pergamum and Thyatira challenge us to confront the duality of light and shadow that resides within all of us. The truth is that true enlightenment cannot exist without the integration of the shadow. The shadow is not something to be feared or denied, it is a part of us that often holds the wisdom necessary for our evolution. When we learn to embrace our shadows, we allow the light to expand, and this integration becomes a powerful path to self-transcendence. Thus, we are invited to look within, to question the beliefs that limit us, and to allow the light of consciousness to illuminate the dark areas of our lives. The message to the churches of Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea invites us to reflect on spiritual authenticity. Often, we find ourselves trapped in masks and appearances, trying to fit into molds that do not reflect our true essence. These letters remind us that authenticity is fundamental to our spiritual evolution. Life is a constant invitation to be true to ourselves and to others. How can we cultivate a life that reflects our deepest values and purposes? This is a question that echoes in our hearts and invites us to deep introspection. As we navigate these messages, we notice that each one is an invitation to awakening, an opportunity to live in alignment with the truth that resides within us. The connection between the letters and modern Christian life is undeniable. Today, more than ever, we need a call to consciousness, a reminder that we are part of something greater, that we are co-creators of our reality, and that the divine presence is always within our reach. Revelation is not just a narrative about the end of times but a revelation of the eternity that already exists within us. It is a love letter inviting us to recognize the inner Christ, to face our fears, and to integrate our shadows. It is a call to set aside the distractions of the world and turn toward the light that shines within us. As we do this, we are able to connect with the essence of love, unity, and consciousness that transcends the limitations of time and space. As we move on to the next theme, exploring the specific lessons of each church, we are invited to delve deeper into the universal truths these messages offer. What can we learn from the Church of Ephesus about the first love? How can the Church of Smyrna teach us to embrace pain as a path to transformation? Each of these letters is an opportunity for reflection and growth, an invitation to live more consciously and authentically. May we continue on this journey together, allowing the lessons of Revelation to guide us toward a fuller life where the presence of the inner Christ becomes the light that illuminates our path, and where every challenge transforms into an opportunity to awaken the consciousness and authenticity that are the true essence of being. The search for truth and spiritual authenticity is a journey that transcends time, and the letters to the churches in Revelation offer us a profound mirror for this reflection. When we look at the letter to the Church of Ephesus, we find an invitation to the awakening of consciousness, a call to return to our first love. This first love is not just a fleeting emotion but a deep connection to the divine essence that resides within each of us. It is a reminder that, amid the distractions and challenges of modern life, we can reconnect with the most authentic part of our existence. Ephesus, a vibrant and culturally rich city, faced the temptation of superficiality and forgetfulness. Like the city, we too are surrounded by distractions that pull us away from our spiritual purpose. The message of Jesus to the Church of Ephesus exhorts us not to lose sight of the importance of genuine love and spiritual connection. It is a call to look inward, to the stillness of our being, and to remember the flame that once burned in our hearts. This flame is often overshadowed by external noise, daily concerns, and social pressures. In this fast-paced world, what does it mean to return to our first love? It means cultivating a conscious presence in every moment. It means bringing our attention back to the now, where true life happens. By allowing ourselves to feel the fullness of the present, we can access wisdom that transcends the limitations of the ego. Love, in this context, is a powerful force that unites us with ourselves and others, allowing us to see beyond appearances and fear. It is through this love that we find our way back to authenticity and truth. The message to Ephesus also confronts us with the need for discernment. The church had worked hard and demonstrated perseverance, but had neglected the essence of love. This deviation serves as a warning to us. In our quest for achievements and success, we can easily get lost in actions that, while valuable, are not nurtured by loving intention. Therefore, the practice of being present and conscious in everything we do becomes essential. By focusing on our actions and asking ourselves whether they come from love or the need for validation, we can begin to align our lives with our higher purpose. The presence of the inner Christ is a constant in our lives. He is not just a historical figure, but a representation of the universal consciousness that invites us to transcend the ego. Just as John's vision of the glorified Christ, we are called to recognize that this same majesty and authority reside within us. By connecting with this presence, we can surpass the limitations we impose on ourselves. Here is where the truth is revealed: we are more than our circumstances or challenges. We are an expression of divinity, and each of us has the ability to manifest this light. In the letter to the church in Smyrna, we find a powerful message about transformation through suffering. Suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience, but it is also a catalyst for spiritual growth. Jesus did not promise a life free of pain but encouraged us to see suffering as an opportunity to evolve. This perspective invites us to accept difficulties as part of the path rather than resist them. What can we learn from suffering? How does it push us to seek a deeper connection with the divine? When we face challenges, it is common to feel alone. However, it is precisely in these moments that we have the opportunity to turn inward and seek the light that resides within us. Suffering, when embraced consciously, can lead to deep transformation. It teaches us to be resilient and develop a new perspective on life. Like the phoenix rising from the ashes, our difficult experiences can shape us and lead us to a higher state of consciousness. The letters to Pergamum and Thyatira speak to us about the duality of light and shadow, a central theme in the spiritual journey. Each of us possesses both light and shadow, and true enlightenment comes from integrating these parts. By confronting our own shadows, we can free ourselves from the illusions that keep us trapped. This integration is not an easy process, but it is essential for our spiritual growth. As we become aware of our weaknesses and limitations, we can begin to transform them into learning opportunities. The message from Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea invites us to reflect on spiritual authenticity. Each of these letters reminds us that authenticity goes beyond external appearances. It is a call to live according to our deepest values and purposes. In a world that often values superficiality, authenticity becomes a light on the path. How can we cultivate a life that truly reflects who we are without being swayed by the expectations of others? Spiritual awakening is a continuous process. As we advance on this journey, it is crucial that we remain open to the lessons life offers us. The letters to the 7 churches are not just messages from the past but timeless guides that help us navigate the present. They teach us about the importance of presence, love, and authenticity, inviting us to live with intention and awareness. As we reflect on these letters, we are reminded that each of us has a role to play in the spiritual evolution of humanity. We are called to be agents of change, not only in our own lives but also in the lives of those around us. How can we be bearers of light and love in a world often engulfed in darkness? How can we be the voice of hope and transformation? As we move forward to the next message, which takes us to Smyrna, we are challenged to accept suffering and the transformation it brings. Life, with its joys and pains, is a rich and complex tapestry. And as we look at this tapestry, we are invited to find the deep meaning that lies in each thread. Thus, the journey continues, and the wisdom we find in the letters to the churches guides us in the search for a more authentic and fulfilling life. Suffering, far from defining us, can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. At the heart of the book of Revelation, we find an invitation to consciousness, a call to transcend the limitations of the ego and enter a space of true perception. Through the letters to the 7 churches, the Apostle John, in a time of great tribulation and persecution, becomes a channel for divine communication, revealing eternal truths that still resonate within us today. This work, dated to the late 1st century, reflects a time when Christians were facing deep adversities and needed encouragement and guidance. John's purpose, therefore, is not merely prophetic but deeply spiritual. He invites us to awaken to the reality of the now, even amid suffering. In the letter to the Church of Smyrna, we find a powerful message about transformation through suffering. Jesus addresses the faithful in this city with words that echo the wisdom of ancient spiritual masters: "Do not fear the things that are about to suffer." Here, we are confronted with the inevitability of pain and the need to accept it as part of our process of evolution. Suffering is not a punishment or a curse, but an opportunity for growth, a catalyst that forces us to look inward and confront our shadows. When we encounter difficulties, it is common to fall into the trap of despair or resistance. However, true wisdom lies in recognizing that every challenging experience carries within it the seed of transformation. By accepting suffering, rather than resisting it, we open the doors to healing and enlightenment. In this sense, the message to Smyrna teaches us the importance of surrender, the practice of letting go of control and allowing life to flow through us. Pain can be seen as a teacher, a force that drives us to question our beliefs, examine our lives, and seek what truly matters. When we face pain, we are confronted with our own vulnerability, and it is in this space that true strength is revealed. Through acceptance, we can transcend identification with suffering and thus discover the peace that resides within. It is therefore essential to remember that suffering, although painful, is an aspect of the human experience that should not be feared. Instead, we must embrace it as part of our spiritual journey. The message to Smyrna encourages us to look at difficulties with new eyes, to realize that pain is often an invitation to transformation. What seems like a heavy burden may turn out to be a path to liberation if we are able to see beyond the surface. During the exploration of this idea, we are led to reflect on how, in our modern lives, we still struggle against suffering. Society often teaches us to avoid pain at all costs, to seek pleasure and security, while spiritual wisdom reminds us that true freedom comes from acceptance. Just as the Christians in Smyrna were challenged to maintain their faith in the face of persecution, we too are called to find our inner strength when we face the storms of life. The letters to the churches of Pergamum and Thyatira bring us a new layer of reflection. These communities dealt with the duality of light and shadow, a theme that deeply resonates with our search for authenticity. In Pergamum, Jesus acknowledges the faith of the faithful but also warns them about the influence of false teachings that can divert focus from the truth. Likewise, in Thyatira, the letter criticizes tolerance of immorality, challenging us to confront the forces that pull us away from our essence. In this context, the integration of the shadow is essential for true enlightenment. The shadow represents everything we deny or repress within ourselves. By ignoring these parts, we become trapped in a cycle of denial, unable to access the fullness of our being. The message of Pergamum and Thyatira invites us to look within and recognize that true strength does not lie solely in the acceptance of light but also in the acceptance of the shadow. When we bring to light what was hidden, we find a new capacity to love and live authentically. This integration is a deep and often painful process. For many, facing the shadow can trigger fears and anxieties, but it is precisely in these moments that we are called to connect with our inner self. The practice of presence, which Eckhart Tolle so eloquently teaches, is a powerful path to this integration. By remaining conscious in the present moment, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, allowing the shadow to reveal itself and thus transform. The letters to Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea offer us a conclusion that resonates with the idea of spiritual authenticity. Each of these communities was called to reflect on their true essence, to recognize the appearances that often obscure deeper reality. Sardis, for example, is warned about its false sense of security, while Philadelphia is praised for its faithfulness and resilience. Laodicea, on the other hand, is called to confront its indifference and open its eyes to the need for genuine transformation. These messages are vital to our contemporary spiritual journey. In a world that often values superficiality and appearance, we are challenged to cultivate a life that reflects our deepest values and purposes. What does it mean to be authentic in a time when distractions are so many? How can we free ourselves from social expectations and live according to the truth that resides in our hearts? The call to authenticity is an invitation to deepen our spiritual practice, to connect with our essence, and to find our true purpose. Just as the mentioned churches, we too are called to examine our lives and ask, are we living truthfully? Are we aligned with our spiritual mission, or have we lost ourselves in the demands of the external world? The spiritual journey is ultimately a search for truth. By confronting our shadows, accepting suffering as part of the transformation process, and seeking authenticity, we take significant steps toward enlightenment. Each of us is invited to become a beacon of light in a world often shrouded in darkness, and true light can only shine when we integrate and accept all parts of ourselves. As we move forward in this reflection, we prepare to explore the specific messages addressed to each of the churches, allowing the lessons they carry to guide us on our own spiritual journey. What can we learn from the struggles and victories of these communities? How can we apply their experiences to our modern lives? The next step is to discover how the duality of light and shadow manifests in our own experiences and how the integration of these forces is essential for our true spiritual evolution. In the vastness of the scriptures, the book of Revelation stands out not only for its symbolism but for the spiritual depth that echoes through the ages. Written by John, a man who faced adversity in his time, Revelation is an invitation to contemplation, an opportunity to awaken consciousness amidst chaos. The historical context in which John found himself, permeated by persecutions and tribulations, makes his message even more relevant. He teaches us that even when circumstances seem dark, it is in the elevation of consciousness that we find the light that illuminates the way. The initial vision of the glorified Christ is a powerful starting point. John describes a majestic figure, clothed in light and authority, that transcends human understanding. This image of the inner Christ invites us to look within, to the divine essence that dwells in each of us. By recognizing this presence, we are reminded that we are not separated from the divine. On the contrary, we are part of a universal consciousness. This is a reality that reveals itself when we transcend the limitations of the ego and open ourselves to the experience of the present moment. The letter to the church in Ephesus is a call to awakening, an exhortation to return to our first love. In a world full of distractions and superficialities, this message resonates deeply. How can we revitalize our spiritual connection amidst the hustle and bustle of modern life? The answer does not lie in seeking outside, but in turning inward, to the silence that resides within our being. It is in this silence that we rediscover the purity of our essence, the unconditional love that connects us to the divine and to each other. In contrast, the message to the church in Smyrna teaches us about the transformation that occurs through suffering. Suffering, often seen as something to be avoided, is actually a catalyst for spiritual growth. When we face pain, we have the opportunity to strip away the illusions of the ego and emerge as more authentic versions of ourselves. Accepting suffering as part of the journey allows us to transcend fear, recognizing that each challenge is a disguised lesson. True transformation happens when we learn to embrace pain, not as a burden, but as a teacher. The letters to Pergamum and Thyatira represent the duality of light and shadow, a theme that challenges all of us to confront the forces that lead us away from the truth. In our search for enlightenment, we often encounter internal resistances that prevent us from moving forward. The integration of shadow is essential to achieving true spiritual understanding. Instead of rejecting or fearing our dark parts, we are invited to welcome them, to recognize that they, too, are part of our journey. Only by embracing our totality can we truly shine with the light that we are. The message from Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea leads us to reflect on the authenticity of our spiritual life. Each of these letters asks us, are we living in accordance with our deepest values and purposes, or are we merely following external appearances? In the pursuit of authenticity, we must ask ourselves if our actions truly reflect who we are. Spiritual authenticity is not just a state of being but a daily practice, a commitment to live with integrity and intention. As we navigate through these messages, we realize that they are not just a reflection of the past but a guide for the present. They invite us to cultivate a life that does not merely respond to external expectations but aligns with our true self. The call to authenticity is a light that shines brightly, revealing the areas of our lives that need attention. It is an invitation to look inward, to recognize our fears and insecurities, and to transform them into opportunities for growth. What unites all these letters is the need for elevated consciousness. As we face the challenges of modern life, we are constantly reminded of the importance of being present. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to live in the now, to slow down, and to listen to the wisdom that arises from inner silence. It is in this space of stillness that we find clarity and direction. The presence of the inner Christ guides us, reminding us that regardless of external circumstances, peace and wisdom are always available within us. In this sense, as we reflect on the messages to the 7 churches, we are called to a journey of self-discovery and transformation. Each letter is a mirror reflecting not only the spiritual condition of the communities of the time but also our own spiritual condition. We are being invited to confront our shadows, to seek authenticity, and to elevate our consciousness. This is a continuous process, a dance between light and darkness, between the known and the unknown. As we move to the next part of this reflection, focusing on Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, we are reminded that authenticity is the key to a full life. How can we cultivate this authenticity in our daily lives, in our interactions, and in our relationship with the divine? The answer is rooted in the courage to be true to ourselves, to embrace our essence, and to live according to our deepest values. The journey continues, and each step brings us closer to the realization of our spiritual purpose. The letters to the 7 churches we find in the book of Revelation are a rich source of spiritual reflection, offering profound lessons that remain relevant in our contemporary world. Each message, addressed to a specific community, resonates with the universal quest for authenticity and purpose. Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, in particular, invite us to introspection that helps us align our outer life with our inner essence. As we consider the letter to the church in Sardis, we are confronted with an urgent call to authenticity. Sardis was a city famous for its wealth and opulence, but the church there was warned for its reputation of being alive while it was, in fact, dead. This leads us to reflect on how we often present ourselves to the world. In modern life, it is easy to get lost in appearances, prioritizing image over internal reality. The message from Sardis reminds us that true spiritual vitality is not found in labels or status but in the sincerity of our being. Authenticity is a state of being that requires us to dive deep into the depths of our consciousness, where we can connect with our most intimate truth, free from external expectations and societal pressure. In the context of spirituality, authenticity is often a solitary but deeply rewarding journey. To cultivate this authenticity, it is essential that we free ourselves from the shackles of the ego, which drive us to seek external validation. When we allow ourselves to be who we truly are, our inner light shines brighter. This does not mean that we will not face challenges. On the contrary, authenticity often puts us at odds with established norms and expectations. However, the courage to be true to ourselves is a fundamental step toward spiritual fulfillment. Moving on to the letter to the church in Philadelphia, we find an invitation to resilience and faith. Philadelphia was a community that, despite its weaknesses, held firmly to its belief and integrity. Jesus praises it for its perseverance and ability to keep God's word even in the face of trials. This leads us to consider the importance of resilience on our own spiritual path. In a world filled with uncertainties and challenges, we are often tested in our faith and convictions. Philadelphia's message inspires us to remain steadfast, to cultivate hope and trust on our journey, even when circumstances seem challenging. Spirituality is not a straight line but a winding path filled with ups and downs. The invitation to resilience is a reminder that even in moments of doubt or discouragement, our connection to the divine and our inner truth will sustain us. It is essential that in our daily practices, we seek to strengthen this connection, whether through meditation, contemplation, or prayer. Like Philadelphia, we can become bearers of light, not just for ourselves but for those around us. Authenticity and resilience walk hand in hand, creating a space where truth can flourish, even in adversity. We then come to the letter to the church in Laodicea. This message is particularly challenging because Laodicea is warned for its spiritual lukewarmness. The community, rich and self-sufficient, had become complacent, losing sight of the essence of its faith. Lukewarmness is a call to deep reflection on how we live our spirituality. Often, we may find ourselves in a state of apathy or indifference, where the daily routine and distractions of the world distance us from our true essence. Jesus' call to Laodicea is an invitation to become fervent in our spiritual commitment. Lukewarmness represents a state of disconnection that prevents us from experiencing the fullness of life. When we become complacent, we risk losing touch with the purpose that drives us. Spirituality should not be a mechanical task or an empty practice, it should be a living expression of our being. Laodicea's message challenges us to rekindle the passion in our journey, to seek the fire that moves us toward love and truth. How, then, can we cultivate this authenticity, resilience, and passion in our spiritual lives? It is essential that we dedicate ourselves to moments of reflection and introspection. This can include practices such as meditation, where we can observe our mind and emotions, allowing the truths we often hide to surface. Silence and contemplation are powerful allies in the pursuit of authenticity. By silencing external voices and listening to what truly resonates within us, we can discover what moves and inspires us. Additionally, the practice of gratitude helps us maintain the connection with the present. By acknowledging and being grateful for the small blessings of everyday life, we can cultivate a positive perspective that sustains us in difficult moments. Gratitude anchors us in the present, steering us away from the lukewarmness that can arise when we focus solely on our worries and challenges. Authenticity also requires the courage to face our own shadows. Often, we are afraid to look within and confront the parts of ourselves that we do not like. However, it is only by integrating these parts that we can become complete and truthful human beings. The spiritual path is an invitation to accept the totality of who we are, including our imperfections and flaws. The letters to the churches of Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea offer us a mirror that reflects our own spiritual journey. They invite us to question the authenticity of our faith, our resilience in the face of difficulties, and the passion we bring to our spiritual practice. By engaging with these messages, we can find a deeper and more meaningful path that not only transforms us but also impacts those around us. As we strive to live according to these principles, we can become beacons of light in a world that often seems dark. Authenticity, resilience, and passion are more than personal qualities, they are expressions of the divinity that resides within each of us. By embracing them, we not only honor our own spiritual journey but also contribute to the spiritual elevation of the collective. Thus, as we reflect on the letters to the 7 churches, we are called to delve deeper into our own spirituality, to cultivate authenticity in our actions, resilience in our difficulties, and passion in our commitment. Revelation, far from being just a story of future events, is an invitation to internal transformation, a call to consciousness that resonates through the centuries and remains present in our daily lives. The vision of the heavenly throne, as presented to John, is a manifestation of reality that transcends space and time. The throne of God rises not as a physical structure but as a symbol of a state of being that encompasses eternity. It is the expression of being that is always present, beyond the limitations of the mind and the concepts we tend to create. When John beholds this vision, he is transported to a state of consciousness that invites us to go beyond identification with form, with history, and with the ego. The 4 living creatures that surround the throne are archetypal representations of creation. With their distinct characteristics, 1 man, 1 lion, 1 ox, and 1 eagle, they symbolize the fullness of life and universal harmony. Each of them, in its singularity, reflects the diversity of existence, while also reminding us of the underlying unity that connects all things. This vision invites us to realize that although duality and separation seem real in our daily lives, there is a deeper reality, a common essence that permeates everything. When we allow ourselves to come into contact with this unity, we find a space of peace and fulfillment that is always available, regardless of external circumstances. The 24 elders who are positioned around the throne represent the wisdom, experience, and collective consciousness of humanity. They are not there to judge but to bear witness to the magnificence of the divine and to acknowledge the truth that resides in every being. Their presence is an invitation to reflect on our own journey and the wisdom we have accumulated over time. Each of us is, in a way, an elder, carrying within us the lessons learned, the pains faced, and the joys celebrated. This connection with collective wisdom inspires us to accept who we are and to open ourselves to the transformation that life proposes. When we encounter the Lamb, we realize that he represents pure consciousness, the essence of being that transcends the ego. The Lamb is worthy to open the sealed book, not because he possesses power in a conventional sense, but because he embodies the truth that is revealed when we free ourselves from the limitations of the mind. In contemplating the Lamb, we are invited to look within and recognize the divine presence that dwells in us and in everything around us. This is a call to awakening, to the awareness that we are more than our thoughts, more than our stories, more than our constructed identities. Each of the 7 seals that the Lamb opens symbolizes a layer of human consciousness. These seals invite us to observe our own experiences, fears, and limitations with a new perspective. As each seal is revealed, we are led to confront the truths we often avoid, but which are essential for our spiritual evolution. This process of revelation is not only a journey of discovery but also a path of transformation that leads us to true freedom. The horsemen that emerge from the seals represent intrinsic aspects of the human experience. The horseman of the first seal, with his bow and crown, symbolizes conquest and the relentless pursuit of meaning. He reminds us that true victory does not lie in domination over others but in the conquest of ourselves, in overcoming our limitations and realizing our highest potential. The horseman of the second seal, with his sword, evokes conflict. Here, we are called to recognize that conflict is an inevitable part of life, but that we can choose how we respond to it. Instead of identifying with the struggle, we can seek the inner peace that allows us to observe, learn, and grow. The third seal brings to light the issue of scarcity and hunger. It confronts us with our own deficiencies, not just material but also spiritual. At this moment, we have the opportunity to reflect on what truly nourishes us. True abundance does not reside in external possessions but in the realization that we are complete in our essence. The fourth seal, which reveals death, challenges our identification with form. Death, often feared, is a transition, an opportunity for rebirth. In accepting the impermanence of life, we find the freedom to live fully in the present. The fifth seal presents the vision of the martyrs, those who stood firm in their truth, even in the face of adversity. This powerful image highlights the courage required to remain true to oneself and to the consciousness that transcends the ego. Life presents us with challenges that can lead us to deep reflection on our beliefs and values. In observing the martyrs, we are inspired to live authentically, allowing the light of consciousness to shine through us, even in dark times. This vision encourages us to ask, what are we willing to sacrifice in the name of truth? The Great Tribulation, which appears with the sixth seal, symbolizes a suffering that leads us to a higher state of consciousness. This suffering, often perceived as unbearable, is an invitation to transformation. Pain can be a path to liberation, a process that leads us to release the bonds of the ego and open ourselves to a life of greater authenticity and spiritual connection. It is through the fire of adversity that the true essence is revealed, and it is in this space that we find the opportunity to be reborn. Thus, the vision of the heavenly throne and the opening of the 7 seals invite us on an inner journey of self-discovery. Each aspect represents an invitation to reflection, acceptance, and awakening. As we allow ourselves to immerse in this experience, we find a path that leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the reality that surrounds us. We are being called to recognize that true freedom and peace are available at every moment, beyond the storms that life presents us. As we move on to the next sub-theme, the figure of the Lamb becomes even more significant. He is not only the symbol of awakened consciousness but also the key that allows us to access the mysteries that are revealed through each seal. The Lamb invites us to look within and recognize that true wisdom lies in our ability to hear the silent voice of consciousness. This voice guides us through chaos and uncertainty, revealing the path to true understanding and connection with the divine. As we prepare to explore the depth of the Lamb and the meaning of the sealed book, we are invited to open our hearts and minds to the revelation that awaits us. The vision of the heavenly throne, as revealed to John, is an invitation to transcendence, a call beyond the limited perception of time and space. It is an experience that cannot be fully understood by the mind but resonates deeply in consciousness. In this sacred space, the throne of God stands as eternal reality, a symbol of the unity that permeates all existence. The four living creatures, with their forms and attributes, are not mere beings but expressions of the infinite diversity of creation, each reflecting fundamental aspects of being: wisdom, strength, harmony, and beauty. The 24 elders, in turn, represent the fullness of humanity, the sum of the experiences of all beings who have ever walked the earth. The union of these beings around the throne is a powerful reminder that, in essence, we are all part of the same divine tapestry. In this context, the Lamb stands out as the symbol of awakened consciousness. He is worthy to open the sealed book, not only because he plays a special role in the cosmic drama but because he embodies purity and clarity of purpose. The Lamb invites us to look within, to recognize the divine presence that resides in each of us. As we contemplate this image, we are led to realize that true dignity does not lie in external achievements but in the ability to unveil the mystery of life and connect with that which is eternal. The Lamb reminds us that wisdom is not merely the accumulation of knowledge but the ability to see beyond the illusions of separation and time. The 7 seals, then, are revealed as layers of human consciousness. Each represents an aspect of the human experience that, when unveiled, invites us to profound transformation. As we face the challenges presented by each seal, we are called to transcend the limitations of the mind and allow the light of consciousness to manifest in our lives. The first seal, for example, confronts us with the idea of conquest, the relentless pursuit of validation and recognition. The horseman who emerges represents the ego's incessant struggle for power but also offers us the opportunity to recognize that true strength lies in our ability to accept what is, rather than fight against reality. When we open the second seal, we are confronted with conflict, the duality that permeates our interactions. Here, we have the chance to see how identification with the separate self generates suffering. The horseman who appears brings a message of liberation. By releasing the need to be right or to win, we find a space of inner peace. The third seal presents us with the issue of scarcity, the fear that permeates our lives and leads to greed and competition. The horseman riding here reminds us that abundance is not an external condition but an internal experience that arises when we recognize the interconnectedness of all things. As we reach the fourth seal, death becomes the central theme. This horseman, who is often viewed with fear, invites us to reflect on the impermanence of life. Death is not the end but a transformation, a passage to a new state of being. By accepting death as part of the cycle of life, we find the freedom that comes from detachment and acceptance. Each seal, therefore, is not merely an event to be observed but an invitation to introspection and spiritual growth. The Great Tribulation, which follows the unveiling of the seals, is a powerful metaphor for the pain and suffering we all face in our journey. It is in this space of discomfort that we are forced to look within and confront the parts of ourselves still attached to the ego. The tribulation, thus, becomes a catalyst for awakening. It is through adversity that we often find our true self, the one that is free from the chains of identification and fear. When we accept suffering as part of our path, we begin to see that there is a light that shines even in the darkest moments. The vision of the martyrs, which arises amid this narrative, highlights the courage necessary to live the truth. The martyrs are not just historical figures but representations of all of us who, at some point, must be true to our essence, even in the face of immense challenges. They inspire us to be authentic, to allow the light of consciousness to shine through us, even when the world seems to be in disarray. This courage is a call to authenticity, to the full expression of our being, without fear of judgment or rejection. As we delve into the depth of these themes, we are led to reflect on the journey of consciousness. The throne in heaven and the 7 seals are not just symbols of an apocalyptic future, but, in fact, they offer us a clear vision of the awakening process that we must all face. Each seal invites us to a new layer of understanding, to a new level of consciousness that, when integrated, brings us closer to the truth of who we are. Thus, as we look towards the next phase of the revelation, we are invited to consider the continuity of this journey, what happens when the seals are opened and the true nature of reality is revealed? What are the implications of a collective awakening, and how does this impact our daily experience? What does it truly mean to live in a world where truth unfolds, and how can we prepare for this new consciousness? As we contemplate these questions, we are guided towards the next stage of the revelation, where the apocalypse becomes an invitation to transformation, not just a series of catastrophic events. This journey is not merely about the end, but about a new beginning, a new way of being that is pulsing within us, waiting to be recognized and lived. In the deep silence that permeates John's vision, we find the essence of what the celestial throne truly is. This is not a physical throne, but a symbol of the divine reality that is always present, beyond the limitations of time and space. John's vision invites us to transcend the mind that fragments and divides, revealing a state of unity where all things are interconnected. The four living beings, each with their uniqueness, represent the fullness of creation. They are not mere spectators but living expressions of universal harmony, reflecting the beauty and diversity of the cosmos. The 24 elders, in turn, are a reminder of the accumulated wisdom throughout the ages, the collective consciousness that, when united, creates a field of love and compassion that sustains all existence. In this space beyond space, where duality dissolves, we encounter the Lamb. This Lamb is not merely a sacrificial figure but the very embodiment of pure consciousness. The Lamb's worthiness to open the sealed book symbolizes the ability to access and reveal the mysteries that surround us. He invites us to look within, to recognize the divine presence that dwells in each of us. Through him, we are led to a state of consciousness where separation and duality become illusions, and the truth of being reveals itself in its fullness. While the seals are unveiled, we are confronted with the layers of human consciousness. Each seal represents an aspect of the human experience, often marked by challenges and limitations. However, as we encounter these layers, we have the opportunity to transcend our identification with the mind. The first seal, which brings forth the white rider, symbolizes conquest, the desire for control, and the pursuit of external validation. This archetype invites us to reflect on how we often seek the approval of others, forgetting that true conquest lies in our ability to embrace the present moment. As we move forward to the second seal, the Red Rider appears, bringing with him conflict and war. This seal confronts us with the reality that, often, we are at war not just with the external world but also with ourselves. The duality that separates us from our deepest truths manifests here, challenging us to look within and find the peace that resides in the silence of consciousness. The third seal, represented by the Black Rider, reveals scarcity and hunger. This is an invitation to examine our beliefs about abundance and lack. By freeing ourselves from the identification with scarcity, we begin to perceive that true abundance is not a matter of possessions but of recognizing the wealth that already exists within us. The fourth seal, with the Pale Rider, confronts us with death and transition. Here, we are reminded that death is not the end but an essential transformation. Acceptance of impermanence frees us from fear and allows us to live more authentically, embracing each moment as an opportunity for growth and learning. As we explore these seals, we are invited to a deep process of transformation, where each layer of consciousness is an opportunity to release identification with the ego and open ourselves to a life of greater authenticity and spiritual connection. The Great Tribulation that unfolds throughout the seals is a reflection of the difficulties and challenges we face on our spiritual journey. It is often through pain that we are called to a higher state of consciousness. Adversity, far from being an obstacle, becomes a catalyst for awakening. In this space of suffering, we are invited to release the identification with the mind that suffers, allowing the light of consciousness to shine through us. This transformation is not easy but is essential for our spiritual growth. By accepting pain as part of the process, we find a path that leads us to true freedom. In the most challenging moments, we can remember the martyrs, figures who, in their courage, remained true to their inner truth. The vision of the martyrs inspires us to live authentically, even in the face of extreme adversity. This courage is not a denial of suffering but a deep acceptance of the present. By recognizing pain and struggle, we find the strength to act from our deepest truth. The light of consciousness becomes a beacon that guides us, even when the road seems dark. In this context, the experience of the riders of the apocalypse and the Great Tribulation offers us an opportunity to reflect on the human condition. Each of us carries within us the echoes of these archetypes, representing our deepest fears, desires, and longings. By confronting these realities, we are invited to transcend fear and identification with the ego, allowing peace to settle in our hearts. As we dive deeper into the vision of the celestial throne and the seals, we are led to a space of contemplation. Through this journey, we find the underlying unity that permeates all existence. Each seal unveiled is a step toward true freedom, a liberation from the chains of the mind and identification with the self. This freedom invites us to live with more authenticity, to recognize the divine presence in every being and in every moment. The Great Tribulation, in turn, reveals the awakening that can arise from adversity. The pain and struggle we face are not merely trials but opportunities for growth and transformation. As we allow ourselves to feel the pain, we find a space of authenticity that connects us with others and with humanity. This connection reminds us that we are not alone on our journey, but that we are part of a greater whole, where every experience is an expression of life in its purest form. As we prepare to explore the courage of the martyrs and the truth they represent, we are invited to reflect on how we can live more authentically in our own lives. How can we remain faithful to our inner truth, even when faced with challenges and adversity? The light of consciousness that shines through us is an invitation to embrace our true essence, allowing it to manifest in our actions and in our way of being. In this space of reflection, we find the continuity of our spiritual journey, where the courage of truth intertwines with the experience of pain and awakening. The path ahead invites us to explore the courage that resides in each of us, a courage that can illuminate the way to a more authentic and meaningful life. In the vastness of the cosmos, where time dissolves and space becomes an expression of eternity, John offers us a vision that transcends the common human experience. In the splendor of the celestial throne, he glimpses the majesty of God, a presence that is not confined to a physical place but permeates all creation. The throne, a symbol of divine authority, rises above all circumstances, reflecting the unity and harmony that exist beyond the divisions of the mind. The four living beings, with their distinct characteristics, represent the totality of creation: man, lion, ox, and eagle, each bringing forth a facet of the human experience. These beings are not mere figures of a narrative but archetypal expressions of consciousness that resonate in our deepest being. The 24 elders surrounding the throne are the manifestation of the wisdom accumulated throughout the ages. They represent the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, symbolizing the integration of the past and the present. In their presence, we find the fullness of human wisdom, a testament to the soul's journey through time. As they bow before the throne, they recognize the ultimate truth, that the true essence of life lies in surrender to the higher force that transcends us. Thus, the vision of the throne invites us to contemplate the depth of our own existence, to free ourselves from the shackles of linear thought, and to open ourselves to the eternal now. At the center of this vision arises the Lamb, worthy to open the sealed book. He is the personification of pure consciousness, the light that illuminates the darkest corners of our own psyche. The act of opening the book is not merely about revealing what is hidden, but rather an invitation to dive into the depths of our own soul. The Lamb invites us to recognize that true wisdom does not reside in answers but in the acceptance of uncertainty and the willingness to explore the mysteries of life. In his presence, we are called to look beyond duality, to transcend the limited vision that the mind imposes on us. The 7 seals that the Lamb opens represent layers of human consciousness, each bringing to light aspects of our experience. Each seal, as it is unveiled, reveals not only the challenges we face but also the opportunities for transformation. The first seal presents the White Rider, a symbol of conquest and the pursuit of power. In our own lives, we often encounter the temptation to seek external validation, to lose ourselves in the relentless pursuit of achievements. The invitation here is to recognize that true victory is not in material conquests but in the realization of our spiritual essence. The second seal reveals a red rider, representing conflict and war. As we observe this symbol, we are confronted with the reality that war is not only external but also internal. We all struggle with the conflicts that arise in our minds and in our relationships. Awakening to this truth allows us to see that peace is not the absence of conflict but the presence of a consciousness that transcends duality. When we become aware of our own patterns of conflict, we have the opportunity to choose peace over war, both within ourselves and around us. The third seal brings forth a black rider, symbolizing scarcity and famine. This seal confronts us with the fear of lack, a deeply rooted belief in the duality of existence. Scarcity is not limited to the material aspect. Often, we feel lacking in love, attention, and understanding. However, as we face this reality, we are invited to cultivate gratitude and recognize the abundance that already exists in our lives. True wealth is not measured by what we possess, but by the ability to appreciate what we already have and by the willingness to share with others. The fourth seal reveals a pale rider, representing death, not just as an end, but as the necessary transformation for rebirth. Death is an inevitable part of life, and recognizing this truth invites us to live with more authenticity and courage. Instead of fearing death, we can see this experience as an opportunity to release what no longer serves us, allowing new possibilities to emerge. This understanding helps us live fully in the present, valuing each moment as a divine gift. As the seals are unveiled, the Great Tribulation becomes visible, a representation of the suffering that all of us face at some point in our lives. Tribulation is a part of the human journey, a path that leads us to a deeper awakening. Pain, though challenging, is often the catalyst that drives us to seek a higher meaning. Thus, tribulation transforms into an opportunity to release the identification with the ego and open up to authenticity. It is in the acceptance of suffering that we find true strength, a strength that connects us to our divine essence. In this context, the vision of the martyrs emerges as a powerful testimony to the courage to remain faithful to the inner truth. These martyrs, who faced extreme adversity, show us that true freedom comes from living according to our true essence, even in the face of fear and suffering. The courage to be authentic in challenging times is an invitation for all of us, a reminder that the light of consciousness can shine brightly, even in the darkest shadows. Thus, as we explore the narrative of the seven seals and the vision of the heavenly throne, we are taken on a journey of self-discovery and transformation. Each symbol, each rider, each seal reminds us that life is an invitation to presence. Presence is not a state of being found in some distant place but a reality that already exists within us. As we become aware of each moment, as we embrace the experience of life in its entirety, we find the peace that transcends all circumstances. Now, as we contemplate the Great Tribulation, we are invited to reflect on how these experiences of pain and suffering can serve as catalysts for awakening. True transformation occurs when we accept that adversity is an inevitable part of life. This acceptance leads us to a space of authenticity, where we can live according to the truth that resides in our hearts. It is in this space that the Great Tribulation transforms into a great opportunity, a path to liberation and spiritual connection. Thus, the journey continues, and the next phase will take us deeper into the Great Tribulation, revealing how pain can become a portal to a higher and more authentic state of consciousness. Through adversity, we find the light that guides us toward true freedom. In the vastness of time and space, John, upon glimpsing the heavenly throne, was invited to experience the essence of what is eternal. That vision is not merely a representation but an invitation to a deeper perception of reality that transcends the duality of human life. God's throne, unchanging and serene, rises above the world's turmoil and conflicts. It is a symbol of the divine presence that permeates all creation, a reminder that beyond temporal narratives and the ego's incessant pursuit, there is a state of being that is pure, whole, and eternal. The four living creatures surrounding the throne reveal the fullness of creation, each of them symbolizes fundamental aspects of existence. The man, the lion, the ox, and the eagle are not mere figures but archetypal representations of totality. They invite us to recognize that, in our essence, we are part of this universal harmony. John's experience invites us to look beyond the mind's limitations, to transcend the fragmented self, and to perceive the unity that connects all forms of life. Thus, in contemplating this vision, we are led to a state of presence where duality dissolves, and we allow ourselves to feel the deep connection with all that is. The 24 elders, with their thrones and crowns, symbolize the wisdom accumulated over the ages. They represent those who, through acceptance and surrender, have reached an elevated state of consciousness. Each of them is a testament to the fact that true wisdom does not reside in accumulating knowledge but in opening to the experience of the present moment. In their presence, we find an invitation to humility, simplicity, and the recognition that true greatness manifests in surrendering to the flow of life. The Lamb, worthy of opening the sealed book, is the embodiment of awakened consciousness. He reminds us that true wisdom is not a matter of intellect but of perception. Looking at the Lamb, we are invited to recognize the purity that resides within us. His ability to open the seals reveals the mysteries of the universe, not as absolute truths but as experiences that lead us to question, explore, and ultimately free ourselves from the mind's limitations. This liberation is a call to transformation, a reminder that by releasing the bonds of the ego, we can access the depths of our essence. Each of the 7 seals represents a layer of perception, an aspect of the human experience that unfolds before us. As each seal is broken, we are confronted with our own limitations and fears. The first seal, with its white rider, symbolizes conquest and the incessant pursuit of power. On the surface, this pursuit may seem like a trajectory of success, but upon deeper reflection, we realize it is an ego trap. True conquest is not external but internal, a recognition that the peace we seek already resides within us. The second seal, with its red rider, confronts us with conflict and war. In a world where separation and rivalry prevail, we are invited to awaken to the reality that the true conflict takes place within. External strife is a reflection of internal struggle, and by recognizing this, we begin to dismantle the barriers that separate us from others and ourselves. The third seal brings forth scarcity, represented by the black rider. Here, we are challenged to confront our perceptions of lack and insufficiency. Society often teaches us to believe that happiness and fulfillment are outside of us, but in opening this seal, we find the truth that abundance is an intrinsic quality of being. Recognizing that we are sufficient in our essence is a fundamental step toward spiritual liberation. The fourth seal presents us with death, symbolized by the pale rider. Death, often feared and avoided, is actually a transformation. By accepting life's impermanence, we find the freedom to live fully in the present. Death is not an end but a passage, and by embracing it, we are invited to release the identifications that bind us to the past and the future, allowing us to experience life as a continuous flow of transformation. As we progress through the seals, we encounter the Great Tribulation, a powerful metaphor for the suffering and pain that all of us face. The tribulation offers us the opportunity for deep awakening. It is through adversity that we are often led to question the narratives we have built around ourselves. Suffering pushes us beyond the ego, forcing us to confront our deepest truths. In this process of pain, we find an opportunity to release identification with the ego and open ourselves to a life of greater authenticity. It is in the Great Tribulation that many of us find the strength to connect with our true essence. Pain can be a powerful catalyst for spiritual growth. As we confront our fears and insecurities, we are invited to transcend identification with pain and recognize that we are more than our experiences. Resistance to suffering is what keeps us trapped, but by accepting it as part of the journey, we find a new space of freedom and possibility. The martyrs, whose vision unfolds before us, exemplify the courage to remain faithful to the inner truth even in the face of extreme adversity. They inspire us to live authentically and allow the light of consciousness to shine through us, even when external circumstances seem dark. This courage is not the absence of fear but the ability to act in alignment with inner truth, regardless of the consequences. This boldness to be true, even in the face of suffering and oppression, is an invitation for all of us to look within and ask ourselves, what really prevents us from living authentically? What holds us back in the shadows of fear and doubt? By recognizing these internal barriers, we can begin to dismantle them, freeing ourselves from the limitations imposed upon us. As we reflect on the vision of the heavenly throne, the Lamb, and the 7 seals, we are invited to consider our own journey of awakening. The Great Tribulation and the courage of the martyrs intertwine in a narrative that reminds us that pain can be a portal to transformation. In this transformation, we find the opportunity to live in harmony with the truth that resides within us. It is in this space of acceptance that we can open ourselves to a life of greater authenticity and spiritual connection. The journey is not linear but a continuous cycle of unfoldings and revelations. Every experience, every challenge, every pain, and every joy brings us closer to the truth of who we are. And, just like the martyrs, we are invited to embrace our own light, allowing it to shine amidst the darkness. As we conclude this reflection, we are called to ask ourselves, how can we incorporate this courage into our daily lives? How can we be true in our actions, even when it means facing resistance and fear? The answer lies in presence. Presence is the space where authenticity reveals itself. It is through presence that we connect with the truth of who we are, beyond the stories and limitations of the ego. And so, the vision of the martyrs is not just a story from the past, but an invitation for all of us today. The courage to remain faithful to our inner truth is what will allow us to live fully, even in challenging times. By embracing this courage, we open the path to true transformation, allowing the light of consciousness to shine not only in us but through us, illuminating the world around us. At this point, we are led to a new reflection. The courage of the martyrs invites us to live authentically, but how can we cultivate this authenticity amidst the trials of life? How can we allow ourselves to be true, even when the world seems to push us towards conformity? The answer to these questions intertwines with the journey of acceptance and presence, which will be explored in the next stage of this reflection on inner truth and spiritual transformation. John's vision, in describing the heavenly throne, transports us to a reality that transcends time and space, a space of purity and illumination where the true essence of being is revealed. In this throne, we see not just a physical representation but the manifestation of the highest state of consciousness. The 4 living creatures, with their unique characteristics, symbolize the totality of creation: strength, wisdom, intuition, and stability. They remind us that all parts of the universe are interconnected in a harmonious dance, where each element plays a crucial role in the symphony of existence. The 24 elders, in turn, represent the wisdom accumulated through the ages, the experience that only time can provide. They sit on their thrones, symbolizing the realization of an awakened consciousness. As we look at this scene, we are invited to recognize that despite appearances and the confusion of the outer world, there is an underlying order that governs everything. This order is the expression of the universal consciousness that pulses within each of us, even though we often remain unaware of it. When we encounter the Lamb, the image that emerges is one of pure consciousness, free from the limitations of the ego. The Lamb is worthy of opening the sealed book because it represents the ability to perceive the truth beyond illusions. Its presence invites us to look inward, to explore the depths of our being, and to discover the light that shines within us. By recognizing this light, we begin to unravel the mysteries of the universe, realizing that we are not just isolated beings but inseparable parts of a greater whole. The 7 seals then become a powerful metaphor for the layers of our consciousness. Each seal represents a human experience, a facet of our journey. As we open each seal, we are confronted with truths and challenges that, once recognized, can set us free. The first layer may show us our quest for control and power, symbolized by the first rider representing conquest. This writer challenges us to question our motivations and the way we seek validation in the external world. As the seals are opened, we meet the second writer, who brings with him conflict. Here we are challenged to look within and recognize the divisions we have created in our lives, both internally and externally. By observing these conflicts, we are invited to transcend duality and find a space of peace that exists beyond struggle. The third seal introduces us to scarcity, personified by the third writer. This figure confronts us with our relationship to abundance and lack. We are led to reflect on how limiting beliefs and the fear of scarcity shape our reality. True freedom emerges when we can release these beliefs and open ourselves to the abundance that is already present in our lives, even if we do not yet perceive it. As we reach the fourth seal, we encounter death, which may seem like a terrifying experience. However, in the light of consciousness, death is not an end but a transformation. This writer invites us to accept the impermanence of life and release our deepest fears. Through this process of acceptance, we find the freedom to live fully in the present, without the weight of the past or the anxiety about the future. The Great Tribulation, revealed in the subsequent seals, is a powerful metaphor for the suffering and difficulties we face on our journey. Often, it is through pain that we are driven to awaken. The crises we live through, whether personal or collective, are opportunities to release the identification with the ego and open ourselves to a new way of being. This awakening through adversity is a deeply transformative experience, where we find the strength and resilience that we often did not know we had. The vision of the martyrs, which emerges as a symbol of courage and authenticity, is an invitation for all of us. These martyrs inspire us to remain faithful to our inner truth, even in the face of the most extreme adversities. They are the bearers of light in times of darkness, reminding us that true courage is not the absence of fear but the willingness to act according to our truth, even when this puts us at odds with the world around us. Through these visions, we are invited to reflect on what it means to live authentically in a world that often seems chaotic and disordered. The practice of presence, which Eckhart Tolle emphasizes in his teachings, becomes essential. Being present means being fully aware of the current moment, without being carried away by distractions and worries that distance us from our essence. When we anchor ourselves in presence, we begin to perceive the beauty and depth of life that surrounds us. Thus, as we contemplate the vision of the heavenly throne and the seven seals, we are led on a journey of self-discovery and transformation. In every layer we peel back, we find not only a new perspective on ourselves but also a deeper connection to the divine. The consciousness that emerges allows us to see beyond appearances and recognize the unity that permeates all existence. Therefore, John's vision is not just a description of apocalyptic events but a revelation of the spiritual journey that we all must face. The heavenly throne is a reminder of the divine presence that dwells within us, and the seals show us the layers we need to uncover to experience this truth. By embracing this journey with courage and authenticity, we allow the light of consciousness to shine in our lives, illuminating our path and bringing peace amidst the chaos. It is in the acceptance of what is, in the willingness to face our fears and limitations, that we find true freedom. The martyrs, the elders, and the living creatures are symbols of this journey, representing the courage to live authentically and the wisdom that comes from experience. Each of us is invited to be a bearer of this light, to express the truth that resides within us, and to contribute to the universal harmony. Thus, as we meditate on the vision of the heavenly throne and the seven seals, we are challenged to ask ourselves, how can we live more authentically? How can we allow the light of consciousness to shine through us, even in challenging times? As we explore these questions, we not only find answers but also a path that leads us to a fuller and more meaningful life. It is in this state of consciousness that we can truly experience unity with all that exists, transcending the limitations of the ego and discovering the beauty of life in its totality. The trumpets sound, and their resonance echoes through the centuries, calling humanity to deep listening. They are not merely instruments of destruction, they are summonses to awakening, an invitation to look beyond the illusions of the ego. Each trumpet that sounds brings with it a judgment, not only upon the external world but, more importantly, upon the inner world of each of us. As natural disasters unfold and spiritual conflicts emerge, we are confronted with the reality of impermanence and the need for transformation. In this context, the inner listening of the trumpets becomes essential. They encourage us to open our eyes and hearts to what truly matters. We live in a world saturated with distractions, where the ego often keeps us trapped in a narrative of separation and struggle. However, when we allow the resonance of the trumpets to act within us, we are guided to a space of acceptance of the present. The judgment they bring is not punitive but an opportunity to reevaluate our actions, thoughts, and patterns of life. The natural disasters we witness can be seen as an invitation to collective awakening. When a hurricane devastates a region or an earthquake shakes the ground beneath our feet, we are forced to confront the fragility of existence. These events, often labeled as judgments, can also be catalysts for profound change in our consciousness. They remind us of the interconnectedness of all things and the responsibility we have to care for our planet and ourselves. Pain and loss, although difficult to endure, have the potential to unite us in solidarity and compassion, revealing the common essence that resides within each of us. On the other hand, the woman, the dragon, and the beast enter the scene as powerful symbols of this internal battle. The woman, representing the divine essence, is the bearer of life, wisdom, and love. The dragon, in turn, symbolizes the ego and its illusions, always ready to devour the light that emanates from the being. The battle in heaven is not just an external struggle but a representation of the internal struggle we all face in our spiritual journey. The true challenge is recognizing that, even in the midst of this battle, true strength arises from the connection with the self. It is in the stillness of consciousness that we find peace, even when external storms threaten to destabilize us. The persecution of the woman's offspring represents the difficulties the soul faces in the quest for enlightenment. This resistance, far from being mere adversity, is an opportunity for growth and strengthening. Every challenge we encounter on our path serves as a test of our determination to remain aligned with our true essence. It is through struggle that we learn to connect more deeply with our spirituality and liberate ourselves from the bonds of the ego. In this scenario, the introduction of the beast and its mark invites us to reflect on how the ego manifests in our modern times. The beast can be seen as the personification of everything that distracts us from our greater purpose, which distances us from the authenticity of the self. We live in a society that often values the superficial, promoting consumerism and the incessant pursuit of external validation. The mark of the beast, therefore, is not just a physical mark but a representation of how we allow the ego to define and limit us. How can we avoid being labeled by this mark? The answer lies in returning to the authenticity of the self. By detaching from what is superficial and trivial, we begin to discover the true essence that resides within us. This return is not an easy path, but it is a path worth taking. Every step towards authenticity brings us closer to true peace, one that is not shaken by external storms but remains firm in the midst of any conflict. The celestial conflicts, then, are revealed as reflections of the internal battles we wage. When we look at the world and see the chaos around us, we can remember that this confusion is a reflection of the confusion within us. True peace is not the absence of conflict but the ability to remain anchored in the present, allowing consciousness to expand despite the storms. When we connect with this space of inner peace, we become capable of facing any challenge with grace and compassion. As the trumpets continue to sound, we are reminded that each note is a call to consciousness. Every judgment they bring is an opportunity for transformation. The woman, the dragon, and the beast teach us about the duality that exists within us and the importance of choosing the path of being. And so, we are led to reflect on our own journey and the constant struggle between the ego and the essence. In this context, the transition to the discussion of the woman and the dragon becomes natural. The battle in heaven transforms into the dance between light and darkness, between being and ego. The woman, in her majesty, represents the divine essence seeking to manifest, while the dragon, with its sharp claws, tries to keep us trapped in its illusions. This struggle is not just a narrative of conflict but an opportunity to awaken to the beauty and depth of life. As we explore this duality, we begin to realize that although the dragon may be powerful, the woman's light is inextinguishable, and it is this light that will ultimately prevail. Thus, as we delve into the symbolism of the woman and the dragon, we realize that this dance is an intrinsic part of our human experience. It is an invitation to become aware of the forces operating within and around us. By connecting with the essence of the woman, we find the courage to face our own dragon. The battle becomes a journey of self-discovery, where each step brings us closer to the light that we are. The inner listening of the trumpets, therefore, prepares us for this journey. They remind us that despite the difficulties, we have the power to choose how we respond to them. We can choose to remain anchored in inner peace, even when the world seems to crumble around us. We can remember that true strength does not reside in external struggle but in the ability to remain firm in our essence, allowing love and compassion to guide our actions. Ultimately, the trumpets invite us to a new way of seeing and living. They challenge us to go beyond the illusions of the ego and awaken to the reality of being. By heeding their call, we are guided towards deep and lasting transformation. And so, as we progress on this journey, we are led to explore the dance between the woman and the dragon, where the true battle unfolds not only in the heavenly realms but also in our own hearts. In the grand theater of existence, where the narratives of life unfold, there is a silent battle taking place, a cosmic dance between light and darkness, between the essence of being and the ego that insists on dominating. The woman and the dragon become symbols not only of external forces but representations of our own internal struggles. The woman, adorned with grace and strength, embodies wisdom, nurture, and connection with the divine. She is the essence that seeks to manifest through us, while the dragon, with its sharp claws and piercing gaze, symbolizes the ego, the illusions we create, and the shadows we project. The battle in heaven, with its trumpets echoing, is an invitation to awaken to this duality. The sound of the trumpets is not just an announcement of judgments and disasters, it is a call to consciousness. When the trumpets sound, they invite us to listen to the truth that lies beneath the surface of appearances. Each resonant note is an opportunity to look within, to confront our fears and insecurities, and to recognize the illusions that keep us imprisoned in the cycle of suffering. What we see as celestial conflicts is often a reflection of the conflicts we wage within ourselves. The question then becomes, are we willing to listen to the call and allow ourselves to be transformed by it? The woman faces the dragon in a battle that transcends space and time. It is a battle that takes place in each of us, in the struggle between true essence and the narratives the ego creates. The dragon, with its threatening presence, tries to convince us that we are separate, that pain and struggle are inevitable, and that the pursuit of power and control is what will define us. But the woman, in her wisdom, reminds us that true strength does not lie in struggle but in surrender. She invites us to surrender to the wisdom of being, to trust that even in the fiercest storms, there is a space of peace that we can access. The symbolism of the woman and the dragon leads us to reflect on the persecution that the woman's offspring face, a persecution that represents the challenges we all encounter in our spiritual journey. This resistance, this struggle against the forces that seek to silence us, is a testament to the resilience of consciousness. Within each of us resides a divine spark, a descendant of the woman, that seeks to manifest and shine. However, the dragon rises to discourage us, to make us believe that we are insignificant or inadequate. But this struggle is not just an external battle, it is an internal journey, where true strength is revealed through connection with our being. Thus, when we look at the natural disasters and judgments that the trumpets bring to earth, we can choose to see them not as punishments but as opportunities for collective awakening. Each catastrophe, each event that challenges our comfortable realities, is, in fact, a call for us to reevaluate, to reconsider our priorities, and to reconnect with the essence that resides within us. What these disasters show us is the fragility of life and the impermanence of our egoic constructions. They force us to look at what truly matters and remind us that true security is not in possessions or certainties but in our connection with the present. The mark of the beast, which appears as a symbol of control and conformity, resonates deeply with the modern times we inhabit. In a world saturated with consumerism and superficiality, the mark manifests in our daily choices, in the priorities we set, and in the illusions we embrace. The beast, then, becomes a reflection of the collective ego, which seeks to distance us from the authenticity of being. The question we must ask ourselves is, what mark are we choosing to carry? Are we allowing the values of the world to define us, or are we seeking the truth that resides within us? The battle between the woman and the dragon, then, is a constant reminder that even in times of great conflict and despair, inner peace is attainable. The celestial conflicts, with their trumpets sounding, invite us to look beyond appearances and anchor ourselves in the reality of the present. True peace is not the absence of challenges but the ability to remain centered and conscious even when the storms rage around us. It is in this space of presence that we find freedom, where the duality between light and shadow dissolves, and where the essence of being is revealed in all its fullness. As the woman continues her struggle against the dragon, she invites us to reflect on the mark we choose to carry and the battle we wage within ourselves. The descent into collective consciousness is a journey that requires courage, an invitation to free ourselves from the chains of the ego and embrace the authenticity of being. Thus, as we deepen into this journey, we are led to question, what does it really mean to live in an era marked by the incessant search for meaning amidst chaos? And as we ask ourselves this, we prepare to explore the dimensions of the mark of the beast, which ultimately challenges us to honestly examine our choices and decide whether we want to be defined by shadows or whether we desire to shine with the light of consciousness. The journey continues, and each step taken toward truth is a declaration of love for our deepest essence. The inner listening to the trumpets is an invitation to awaken. Each resonant sound is not merely an alarm of disaster, but a call to consciousness, a reminder that life, in its essence, is a perpetual cycle of transformation. The seven trumpets, with their deep echoes, speak to us not only of judgments and calamities but of opportunities for inner renewal. When we are confronted with natural disasters and spiritual conflicts, it is easy to get lost in the narrative of fear, but the real challenge is to look within and realize that these external experiences often reflect our internal struggles. The trumpets can be seen as symbols of our spiritual journey, where each blast invites us to explore the layers of our consciousness, to free ourselves from the ego, and to embrace the reality of the now. Rather than fearing the storms that approach, we can ask ourselves, what is this teaching me? What do I need to release so that I can connect more deeply with my being? The transformation required is not an external struggle, but a surrender to the flow of life, where we accept what is, without resistance. This acceptance is the first step toward true transformation. The woman and the dragon then present us with a cosmic dance that unfolds within each of us. The woman, representing the divine essence, carries the force of creation, nurturing, and protection. She is the bearer of life and hope, while the dragon symbolizes the ego, with its illusions and fears. This battle in the sky is not a distant struggle, but a mirror of our own internal battles. We all face the dragon at some point, whether in the form of insecurity, doubts, or the incessant search for external validation. However, the true strength of the woman lies in her connection to the self. When she remembers her essence, the battle transforms into a dance of power and love. The resilience of the soul is what allows us to face the shadows of the ego and emerge stronger. This duality teaches us that even in times of conflict, we can access a source of inner peace. The path is clear: to recognize our struggles and, rather than fighting against them, allow them to guide us to a higher state of consciousness. As we contemplate the natural disasters happening around us, we are confronted with the idea that these events can be seen as a collective awakening. Each trumpet that sounds can be interpreted as a call from the earth, a reminder that we are all interconnected and that our actions have consequences. Instead of seeing these disasters as punishments, we can see them as opportunities for reflection and change. They force us to reassess our priorities, reconsider how we are living, and question what truly matters. Collective consciousness can be awakened through pain, but it can also blossom in compassion. When we are confronted with the fragility of life, we often become more aware of our interconnectedness. It is in this space that true transformation can occur. The trumpets call us to a state of unity, where we realize that the struggle of another is also our struggle and where pain is an invitation to empathy. The persecution of the woman's offspring echoes the resilience of consciousness. The woman, symbolizing spiritual essence, faces challenges and oppressions that reflect the struggles we all face in our quest for enlightenment. This persecution is not just external, but also internal, representing the voices of the ego that try to silence the true nature of the self. However, just as the woman rises in the midst of adversity, we too can find strength in our vulnerability. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to strengthen our connection to the divine essence. We are the bearers of light, and even when we are pursued by the shadows of the ego, we can find a way through love and compassion. The resistance we face may shape us, but it does not have to define us. The trumpets remind us that despite difficulties, there is always a way back to the light. The mark of the beast, in turn, invites us to reflect on the nature of the ego in modern times. In our contemporary society, we are often bombarded by messages that promote consumerism, superficiality, and the incessant search for external validation. The beast, in this context, represents the illusions that pull us away from our true essence. When we allow these marks to define us, we become prisoners of an ego that knows no bounds. The introduction of the beast invites us to question what we truly value. Are we living in alignment with what is authentic to us, or are we merely following the expectations imposed by the outside world? The pursuit of status, possessions, and power can pull us away from our true nature. However, recognizing this mark is the first step toward liberation. We can choose to dismantle the narratives that limit us and return to our essential self. Celestial conflicts, then, are reflections of the internal battles we all fight. True peace is not the absence of conflict but the ability to remain connected to the present even in the midst of the storm. Life is a dance of opposites, and by accepting this duality, we find a space of harmony. The consciousness that expands even in the face of challenges is a testament to our capacity for transformation. As we navigate these conflicts, we can remember that every trumpet that sounds is an opportunity to awaken. The call is for unity, for connection to the self. Recognizing the woman, the dragon, and the beast within us is a vital step in our spiritual journey. By embracing our internal struggles and allowing ourselves to be guided by the light of consciousness, we can transcend the limitations of the ego. The resilience of consciousness is a recurring theme in our search for meaning. The woman who rises amid persecution is a symbol of hope. Just like her, we too can find strength in adversity. The journey is not linear, but it is filled with opportunities for growth and transformation. As we look to the future, we are invited to consider how we can live more authentically, freeing ourselves from the marks that imprison us. As we explore this path, the next stage calls us to reflect on the resilience of consciousness and the struggle for enlightenment. The persecution faced by the woman's offspring is a powerful metaphor for the journey we all undertake in search of deeper meaning. How, then, can we prepare for the challenges to come while allowing ourselves to flourish in our true essence? The journey continues, and with it, the promise of deep and lasting transformation. The echo of the trumpets resonates in our consciousness, signaling not only the imminence of judgments but a profound call to inner transformation. Each note, each sound, reverberates within us as a reminder that the reality we inhabit is much more than the illusions of the ego. The meaning of the seven trumpets goes beyond what we can see. It is an invitation to awaken, to transcend the surface, and dive into the depths of the present. Thus, in the face of the natural disasters that ensue, we are prompted to reflect: what is being revealed in our life? What hidden truths are emerging in the chaos? Natural disasters, often seen as severe judgments, can be interpreted as opportunities for collective reassessment. They force us to confront our priorities, to question our connection to nature and to others. What are we prioritizing? What truly matters in our lives? This reassessment is not just a matter of survival but a call to the awakening of collective consciousness. Each trumpet that sounds can be seen as a reminder to connect with the essence that transcends the ego, that invites us to unite rather than divide. In this context, the figure of the woman and the dragon emerges as a powerful symbol. The woman represents the divine essence, the creative force that nurtures and sustains, while the dragon symbolizes the ego, illusions, and forces that try to divert us from our path. The battle that takes place in the sky is, in fact, a representation of the inner struggle that we all face. Each of us carries within us this duality, this dance between being and ego. The dragon can be seen as resistance to our true self, a force that seeks to keep us trapped in illusions of separation and fear. However, just as the woman is not defeated by the dragon, we also have the ability to rise above the limitations of the ego. This internal struggle teaches us that true strength lies not in fighting the ego but in recognizing its presence and consciously choosing connection with the self. When we allow ourselves to see the dragon not as an enemy but as a part of us that cries out for attention and healing, we begin to find true resilience. It is this resilience that guides us on our spiritual journey, allowing us to move forward despite the difficulties and challenges that arise along the way. The persecution of the woman's offspring illustrates the challenges that the soul faces in its quest for enlightenment. This resistance is not a sign of weakness but an opportunity for growth. Each of us, in our own journey, can identify with this persecution, with the obstacles that seem to stand between us and the realization of our true potential. However, it is precisely through adversity that we develop inner strength. It is in this space of struggle that consciousness expands, where the light begins to shine more intensely. The struggle of the woman's offspring is, therefore, a testament to the resilience of consciousness. When we are confronted with the challenges that life presents to us, we have the opportunity to choose how to respond. We can succumb to despair and frustration, or we can use these experiences as stepping stones to self-knowledge and transformation. As we become more aware of our reactions and choices, we begin to see that the real battle is not against external forces but against the limitations we place on ourselves. The resistance to awakening is a constant on the spiritual journey. Often, life presents us with challenges that seem insurmountable, but it is precisely in these situations that we are led to confront the ego and its illusions. The woman's offspring, therefore, represents not only an external struggle but an invitation to introspection. Each of us is called to question, what am I really pursuing? What are the marks that define me? It is here that we enter the theme of the mark of the beast, which symbolizes the influence of the ego and consumerism in our contemporary society. The mark of the beast is a representation of what distorts us and distances us from our authenticity. In modern times, this mark can be seen in the social pressures that lead us to seek external approval, to consume incessantly, and to identify with possessions and status. The question that arises is, how much of our essence do we lose by allowing ourselves to be marked by the superficial? When we reflect on the mark of the beast, we are confronted with the reality that many of our choices are made out of fear and a lack of connection with our deepest self. Consumerism becomes a way to escape pain, a way to fill the void we feel. However, this external pursuit rarely brings true satisfaction. It distances us from who we truly are and keeps us trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and relentless searching for more. True freedom, on the other hand, comes from the conscious choice to disconnect from these marks and illusions. When we turn inward, we begin to recognize that our true identity is not in possessions or external approval, but in the connection with the divine essence that resides within us. This is the mark that truly matters, the mark of the self, which reminds us of our true nature and guides us on our journey of enlightenment. Thus, the celestial conflicts we witness in the outer world are ultimately reflections of the inner battles we fight. The struggle between the self and the ego manifests in our lives, in relationships, and in our interactions with the world around us. It is crucial to remember that true peace is not the absence of conflicts, but the ability to remain anchored in the present, even amidst external storms. When we manage to cultivate this inner peace, we begin to see life in a new way, where challenges become opportunities for growth and learning. As we navigate the celestial conflicts, we are invited to remain aware of our role in this dance. What are we choosing to nurture in our lives? Which part of us are we allowing to prevail? It is in this space of choice that transformation occurs. By connecting with the self, we bring forth the authenticity that allows us to transcend the limitations of the ego and live a life of truth and purpose. Reflecting on the journey of the woman, the dragon, and the beast reminds us that the pursuit of enlightenment is, in fact, a journey of self-discovery. Every trumpet that sounds is a call for us to wake up, to not only observe the conflicts around us but to ask ourselves how we are contributing to them. Awakening is not just a personal experience, it is a collective call for transformation. And so, as we look to the future, we are invited to consider, how can we free ourselves from the marks that bind us and return to the authenticity of the self? How can we be agents of change in a world that often seems dominated by the ego? These questions lead us to a place of deep reflection, where the spiritual journey becomes not just an individual quest, but a shared path in search of truth, love, and connection. In this sense, the next step is to explore the relationship between this mark of the beast and the way we allow ourselves to be shaped by external influences, questioning the authenticity of our choices and seeking the true freedom that comes from within. How can we disconnect from superficiality and connect with the essence that guides us? This is the question that propels us forward, that drives us to continue our journey toward awakening and the full realization of our potential. The search for inner truth is often a path filled with challenges and conflicts. Amidst this journey, we are confronted with the trumpets that sound, not only as warnings of natural disasters and judgments but as profound calls to consciousness. These trumpets represent an awakening, an invitation to transcend the limitations of the ego and embrace the essence of the self. Each resounding note is a reminder that reality goes beyond superficial perceptions, beyond identification with external circumstances. The judgments that the trumpets bring to earth are not mere catastrophes, they are opportunities for transformation. In a world where nature often rebels, where calamities and natural disasters seem to be more frequent, it is easy to fall into the trap of despair. However, when we view these events through the lens of consciousness, we realize that they can serve as catalysts for a deep reassessment of our lives. These painful moments are invitations to reconnect with our essence, to awaken to a new perception of reality. When confronted with chaos, we have the chance to ask ourselves, what really matters? Or, how can I align more deeply with what is true within me? The woman and the dragon represent the eternal dance between the divine essence and the egoic aspects that we all face. The woman, in her purity and strength, symbolizes the connection with the self, with the truth that inhabits us. The dragon, on the other hand, personifies the illusions that distance us from this truth, the narratives we build around who we think we are, often based on fear and insecurity. The battle that takes place in the sky is not merely a representation of external conflicts, it is the reflection of the internal struggle that we all wage. In this sense, each of us is a battlefield, where true strength arises from the ability to connect with our deepest essence, even in the face of adversity. The persecution of the woman's offspring, which symbolizes the search for enlightenment and truth, is a powerful metaphor for the challenges we face on our spiritual path. The resistance we encounter does not serve only to divert us from our purpose, but also to strengthen us. Every obstacle, every criticism, every moment of doubt can be seen as an opportunity to reaffirm our connection with the self. It is in adversity that we forge our resilience, and our ability to remain steadfast in the pursuit of truth. When we allow ourselves to feel and face our fears, we begin to dismantle the illusions that bind us to the ego. The introduction of the beast and the mark of the beast invites us to reflect on how the ego manifests in modern times. In a consumerist society, where superficiality often seems to be the norm, the question we must ask ourselves is, what are we really valuing? The mark of the beast can be seen as a representation of the choices we make, the identifications we accept. The ego feeds on what is fleeting, on what is ephemeral. However, when we allow ourselves to look beyond superficial distractions, we find the authenticity of the self. What does it mean to be authentic in a world that often promotes falsehood? The answer lies in our ability to anchor ourselves in presence, to recognize the power of the now, where all illusions dissipate, and the truth is revealed. Amid all these conflicts, both internal and external, true peace is not the absence of struggle but the ability to remain centered, even when storms approach. The celestial conflicts we observe are reflections of the battles we fight within. Each moment of anger, fear, or insecurity is an opportunity to turn our attention to what truly matters. Inner peace is the result of a deep commitment to the present, to the reality that unfolds before us. As we become more aware of our own nature, we learn to navigate life's storms with grace and security. These conflicts, both celestial and terrestrial, teach us that true transformation begins within us. Every trumpet that sounds is an invitation to awaken, to set aside illusions and connect with the essence of the self. As we deepen this journey, we realize that external storms can lead us to a place of greater self-knowledge and, consequently, greater inner peace. Thus, the true question becomes, how can we anchor ourselves in consciousness while life unfolds around us? As we reflect on the mark of the beast and the conflicts that arise in our society, it is essential to recognize that the struggle is not against something external but an internal battle. Every time we succumb to superficiality, every time we allow ourselves to be carried away by the distractions of the modern world, we are moving away from our authenticity. The mark of the beast, then, serves as a warning, a reminder that we must be vigilant on our spiritual journey. Consciousness is the antidote to alienation. It is through consciousness that we find our way back home. Just as the woman fights against the dragon, each of us has the power to reclaim our truth and resist the calls of the ego. It is a sacred dance between the self and the ego, where true strength is revealed when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and, at the same time, resilient. What is asked of us is not to eliminate the ego but to learn to dance with it, to recognize its limitations, and at the same time celebrate the power of the self that resides within us. In the face of all the challenges we encounter, inner peace emerges not as a state to be achieved but as an intrinsic quality that is revealed when we are fully present. As we deepen this practice, we begin to realize that external conflicts are, in fact, reflections of the battles we fight within. True serenity is found in the acceptance of what is, in the ability to observe feelings and emotions without identifying with them. So, how can we cultivate this inner peace amidst the celestial conflicts that surround us? The answer can be found in the practice of mindfulness and connecting with the present moment. As we become more aware of our thoughts and emotions, we can discern between what is true and what is illusory. This discernment allows us to navigate through life's storms with a sense of purpose and clarity. As we connect with the essence of being, we begin to realize that the true battle is not against external forces, but against our own resistance to what is. Inner peace becomes a choice, a continuous practice of returning to the present, even when the world around us seems chaotic. And so, as we embrace this journey, each trumpet that sounds becomes a call to awareness, an opportunity to awaken to the truth that resides within us. As we reflect on the relationship between celestial conflicts and inner peace, we are invited to consider, to what extent are we willing to open ourselves to our own essence? The spiritual journey is a journey of self-discovery, where each challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. As we learn to integrate the lessons of conflicts, we find a space of deep transformation and renewal. Peace is not a destination, but a state of being that is revealed when we allow ourselves to be fully present, when we let go of illusions and embrace the reality of the now. Thus, at the end of this journey of reflection, we are led to an essential question: how can we, amidst the conflicts and the trumpets that sound in our lives, anchor ourselves in the inner peace that is our birthright? This is the question that invites us to a new way of living, to a new understanding of what it means to be human in times of turmoil. And it is in this quest that we find the true essence of being, where every trumpet that resounds becomes a melody of transformation and awakening. The inner listening to the trumpets resonates within our being, calling for an awakening that transcends the limitations of the ego. Each of the 7 trumpets, with its penetrating sound, is not just a warning of judgments to be brought upon the earth, but an invitation to internal transformation. In our contemporary life, surrounded by natural disasters and spiritual crises, the deeper meaning of each trumpet can lead us to more intense reflection on our connection with the divine essence. As we hear these calls, we are driven to reevaluate our priorities, to reconnect with what truly matters. Natural disasters, often interpreted as manifestations of judgment, can be seen in a different light. Instead of viewing these calamities as mere punishments, we can see them as opportunities for collective awakening. When the earth trembles, when the winds blow with fury, and when the waters become a flood, we are forced to stop and reflect. This moment of pause is an invitation to look within ourselves. What are we doing with our time? How are we living our lives? These events can lead us to question the values we uphold, the way we relate to the world, and, more importantly, how we relate to our own being. The battle between the woman and the dragon, which unfolds in the heavens, is a powerful representation of the inner struggle that we all face. The woman symbolizes the divine essence, the creative force and the nourishment that exists within all of us. On the other hand, the dragon represents the ego, the illusions, and the distractions that take us away from our true nature. The battle is not an external fight, but an intrinsic dance that takes place within each of us. The dragon's resistance is intense, but the woman's strength is even more powerful, for she is fueled by her connection with being. The celestial conflicts, therefore, are not just a cosmic phenomenon but a representation of the battles we fight within. Often, we find ourselves immersed in cycles of self-destructive thoughts, fears, and insecurities that prevent us from recognizing our true essence. The woman, in her quest for enlightenment, faces the dragon's pursuit, which tries to suffocate her light. However, this resistance, far from being an obstacle, can become a source of strength. Every challenge we face gives us the opportunity to strengthen ourselves and bring us closer to our true nature. The woman's descent to earth, fleeing from the dragon, is a powerful symbolism for all of us who seek truth. The woman's offspring represents the continuity of consciousness, the persistence of light in a world filled with darkness. This resistance is a metaphor for the challenges we face in our spiritual journey. The persecution of the woman's offspring, therefore, is not just an ancient narrative, but a reflection of the soul's ongoing struggle for enlightenment in a world that often seems hostile. As we navigate through these times of conflict and turmoil, the mark of the beast emerges as a warning about how we allow ourselves to be influenced by the ego and consumerism. The beast, with its seductive appeal, represents all that diverts us from the authenticity of being. In modern times, we are constantly bombarded with messages telling us what we should be, what we should have, and how we should behave. This mark then becomes a metaphor for the superficiality that permeates our society. We ask ourselves, to what extent are we allowing this mark to define us? The mark of the beast, at its core, is a reflection of the disconnection we feel from our true nature. When we allow ourselves to be consumed by the external, be it through material goods, social validation, or appearances, we lose sight of who we truly are. As we reflect on the beast's introduction into our lives, it is essential that we question what it means to live authentically. How can we free ourselves from the chains of the ego and return to the essence of being? This search for authenticity is a journey that, while filled with challenges, is also incredibly enriching. As we face celestial conflicts and the disasters that surround us, true peace is not found in the absence of conflict, but in the ability to remain anchored in the present. Inner peace is a state of being that transcends external storms. When we connect with our being, we begin to see conflicts as part of the growth process. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to expand our consciousness, to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. True strength lies in our ability to remain present, even amidst uncertainty. When we can observe internal and external conflicts without identifying with them, we begin to realize that peace is already within us. This peace is not an escape from reality, but a deep acceptance of what is. By anchoring our awareness in the present, we allow the light of the divine essence to shine through us, even in the most challenging situations. The invitation that the trumpets give us is a call to transformation. Each judgment that manifests, whether in natural calamities or spiritual struggles, is an opportunity to awaken to greater consciousness. When we hear the call of the trumpets, we must ask ourselves, how can we respond? Are we willing to look within and face our fears, our insecurities, and our shadows? This willingness for self-transformation is the first step to a fuller and more authentic life. Ultimately, celestial conflicts are a reflection of our internal state. When we connect with the essence of being, we find the strength needed to face the battles that surround us. The woman, the dragon, and the beast are not just mythical figures, but representations of the forces operating within us. By embracing this reality, we find a path to peace, authenticity, and true freedom. Thus, as we listen to the trumpets, may we remember that each sound is an invitation to awaken, to look within, and to reconnect with the essence that unites us. Each judgment can be an opportunity for transformation, each conflict a chance for growth. And in the end, true victory does not lie in fighting the dragon or overcoming the beast but in discovering the inner peace that has always been there, waiting to be recognized. The wrath of God, often depicted in Scripture as an act of punishment, is, in fact, a manifestation of the need to restore order and truth. This wrath should not be seen as a punitive emotion but as an expression of the divine urgency to awaken human consciousness. The presence of this wrath is a profound call for each of us to reflect on the choices we make and their consequences. As we look at the world around us, we can see that many of our conflicts and sufferings are the fruits of our disconnection from this essential truth. The wrath of God, then, becomes an invitation to introspection. It is a sign that the moment of awakening has come and that humanity is called to align itself with the reality of being. When we speak of the bowls of the wrath of God, we can consider each of them as an opportunity for purification. These final judgments are not merely punitive, they are a process of unveiling, where the illusions that sustain the ego are brought to light to be confronted and transformed. Divine wrath, therefore, is not an expression of anger or vengeance, but a loving action that seeks to restore lost harmony. It is as if God is crying out for humanity to awaken from its deep sleep of ignorance and separation. The perception of God's wrath leads us to a deeper understanding of the nature of the universe and our role within it. Each of us is invited to look within, to confront the shadows that dwell within our being. When we do this, we begin to see how our choices, often guided by the ego, contribute to disorder in the world. Divine wrath is thus a call to reconnect with our essence, to recognize that we are co-creators of the reality we live in. The fall of Babylon, in turn, symbolizes the decline of the world system that opposes God. Babylon represents the egoic mind, materialism, and the illusion of separation that permeates our lives. Its fall is a prophetic event that invites us to release the illusions that no longer serve our spiritual evolution. By understanding Babylon as a representation of the ego, we realize that its fall is not just an apocalyptic event but an internal process of dismantling the beliefs that imprison us. When Babylon falls, we are confronted with the possibility of a new beginning. This fall is an invitation to liberation, to seek the truth that lies within us. Materialism, the incessant pursuit of possessions and status, is a path that leads us to suffering. The fall of Babylon reminds us that true wealth cannot be found in material goods but in the realization of our essential being. It is a call to abandon what no longer serves us and embrace simplicity and authenticity. In this context, we can see the Battle of Armageddon not as an external confrontation but as an inner struggle that each of us faces. This battle represents the struggle between light and darkness that dwells within us. It is a process of spiritual transformation that challenges us to overcome the ego and connect with our true essence. In this sense, the true victory is not about defeating external enemies but about conquering inner peace. The Battle of Armageddon teaches us that true power lies in our ability to choose light, even in the face of darkness. Each time we choose to act with love, compassion, and authenticity, we are winning this battle. This choice is not easy. It requires courage to face the parts of us that are still rooted in fear and separation. However, it is in this confrontation that we find the path to true freedom and the fulfillment of our full potential. As we approach the final judgment, we are invited to reflect on the meaning of this moment. Judgment is not an act of condemnation but an opportunity for self-evaluation. It is a moment when we are confronted with the truth about ourselves and our choices. This process of revelation allows us to see where we have strayed from our true path and offers us the chance to align our actions with our divine essence. In this context, the final judgment is an expression of divine mercy. It is an invitation to transformation, healing, and reconciliation. As we face the truth about ourselves, we have the opportunity to free ourselves from the chains that imprison us. The revelation of the truth is an act of love, which allows us to see beyond illusions and reconnect with our true nature. Thus, the final judgment becomes a moment of great hope and potential for rebirth. Finally, the vision of the New Jerusalem becomes a symbol of this new reality that we can cultivate within ourselves. The New Jerusalem is not just a physical place but a state of being where love, compassion, and unity prevail. In this inner space, the presence of God becomes evident in our lives, and the connection with the divine is manifested in the way we interact with the world around us. When we inhabit the New Jerusalem, we experience the fullness of life. This new consciousness allows us to see beyond the limitations of the ego and connects us with the essence of being. It is a state of peace and harmony where separation is dissolved, and unity is celebrated. In this space, the wrath of God is no longer seen as an act of punishment but as a loving impulse that invites us to awaken to the truth. The New Jerusalem is the final destination of our spiritual journey, but it is also a continuous process of transformation. Each of us has the responsibility to cultivate this state of being within ourselves. By doing so, we contribute to the building of a more loving and compassionate world. The presence of God in our lives becomes a beacon that illuminates the path for those who are still lost in the shadows of the ego. Thus, as we reflect on the wrath of God and the New Jerusalem, we are reminded that true transformation begins within us. Every choice we make, every thought we nurture, has the power to shape our reality. Divine wrath calls us to awaken to this responsibility and to embrace the truth that resides within us. As we prepare to explore the spiritual meaning of the fall of Babylon, we are invited to consider how the illusions we hold can keep us trapped in a cycle of suffering. The fall of Babylon is not just an external event but an opportunity for inner liberation. How, then, can we detach ourselves from the beliefs and patterns that no longer serve us? How can we open ourselves to the truth that awaits us, allowing the light of the New Jerusalem to illuminate our path? It is this reflection that will lead us to a deeper understanding of the meaning of our journey. In the silence that permeates existence, there lies a form of wisdom that we often ignore. The wrath of God, so misunderstood, is not a punitive emotion but an expression of the need to restore order and truth. It arises like a wave that sweeps away illusions, an urgent call to human consciousness to awaken. Divine wrath is, therefore, a reflection of the need for alignment with the essence of being, an invitation for us to look deeply within ourselves and recognize the consequences of our choices. The fall of Babylon, in this context, becomes a powerful symbol. Babylon represents the ego, materialism, and the mind that has become lost in the illusions of the world. When we speak of the fall of Babylon, we speak of the dissolution of the mind structures that keep us imprisoned in a fragmented reality. It is an opportunity for liberation, a chance to free ourselves from the chains that prevent us from perceiving our true essence. The fall of Babylon is not just an external destruction, it is an internal transformation. By recognizing the Babylon within us, we begin to free ourselves from the illusions that surround us. It is in this movement of liberation that we find the true battle of Armageddon. This is not a conflict that takes place in a distant land, but a struggle that unfolds within each of us. It is the battle between light and darkness, between our true nature and the ego that insists on defining us. Armageddon invites us to look within, to confront our shadows, and to make peace with them. This process of spiritual transformation is fundamental for us to transcend the ego and elevate ourselves to a higher state of consciousness. However, this journey is not mere condemnation. The final judgment, often seen as a moment of punishment, should be understood as an opportunity for self-evaluation and spiritual growth. In this moment, we are invited to reflect on our lives, our choices, and the impact they have had on us and others. Judgment is not an act of a distant God but a revelation of the truth that already exists within us. As we align with our true nature, we draw closer to the consciousness of the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is not just a physical place but a state of being, an inner space where love, compassion, and unity prevail. As we free ourselves from the illusions of Babylon and face the inner battle of Armageddon, we begin to experience the New Jerusalem in our lives. It is in this state of elevated consciousness that the presence of God becomes evident, manifesting in every act of kindness, every gesture of love, and every moment of gratitude. The New Jerusalem invites us to live fully, to recognize that true happiness is not in material possessions but in connection with the divine and with other beings. When we speak of God dwelling with His people, we enter a space of union with the divine that transcends time and space. This dwelling is an experience of presence, where separation and ego dissolve into a consciousness of totality. In the New Jerusalem, there is no place for fear, doubt, or loneliness. Instead, eternity manifests in the fullness of life, where every human being can experience the abundance of divine love. It is a state of being where we can truly dwell, where we can reconnect with the essence that unites us all. As we approach this reality, the external battle between the forces of good and evil becomes a reflection of the internal battle we are already waging. The transformation that occurs within us is the catalyst for the change we wish to see in the world. The New Jerusalem is not just a destination for the future but a call to action in the present. We can choose to live in harmony with our inner truth, manifesting the light that already exists in our being. Thus, the journey through the fall of Babylon, the battle of Armageddon, and the final judgment prepares us for the glory of the New Jerusalem. This glory is not a reward waiting for us in the hereafter but a reality that we can begin to experience here and now. As we become aware of our own anger, our own inner battles, and align with the truth, we make space for the divine to manifest in our lives. We are, therefore, on the brink of a new understanding. As Babylon crumbles, what remains is the possibility of rebirth. The inner battle becomes an opportunity for transformation, and the final judgment, an invitation to self-evaluation. The New Jerusalem reveals itself as a state of consciousness where the presence of God becomes palpable, and where each of us is called to live in harmony with creation. And as we speak of the New Jerusalem, we are led to consider the Battle of Armageddon not just as an isolated event but as a continuous internal struggle that never ends, for light and darkness coexist within each of us. This struggle, this dance between good and evil, is what makes us human. It is our journey and, at the same time, our mission. Therefore, as we reflect on the New Jerusalem, we must prepare for the battle that lies ahead, not in an external war zone, but in the depths of our hearts. The true battle of Armageddon is the one that leads us to confront our own shadows, to recognize our weaknesses, and to elevate our consciousness. It is a journey that not only transforms us but also, at the same time, transforms the world around us. Thus, as we look toward the struggle that lies ahead, let us remember that every small step we take toward the light is a step toward the New Jerusalem. And this journey, this continuous battle, is an invitation for all of us to become agents of change, promoting peace and harmony in our lives and in the lives of those around us. May we, therefore, be prepared, for the battle of Armageddon is closer than we think, and the New Jerusalem awaits us, ready to be revealed in all its glory. The Battle of Armageddon is not just an event that occurs on an apocalyptic timeline, but an internal struggle that each of us faces. This battle, often imagined as an epic confrontation between opposing forces, actually unfolds within our hearts and minds. It is the struggle between light and darkness, between the ego and the true essence of being. When we encounter the wrath of God, we understand that this is not a punitive emotion but an expression of love that seeks to restore order and truth in our lives. It is the divine urgency that invites us to awaken, to look inward, to confront the shadows that dwell within us. The awareness of divine wrath, therefore, brings us to a point of reflection. The wrath of God is not a deviation from love but a manifestation of the need for truth to prevail. In a world saturated with distractions and illusions, where materialism and superficiality shape our lives, this wrath becomes a call for us to free ourselves from the chains that imprison us. Babylon, in this context, symbolizes not just an ancient city but the world system that opposes the divine, a mental state characterized by identification with the ego and the incessant pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The fall of Babylon is, therefore, an invitation to transformation. As this structure collapses, we are challenged to look at our own lives and question what we truly value. True liberation begins when we leave behind the illusions of the world and turn to the essence of being, where peace and harmony are possible. This transition is not easy, for it involves confronting one's own shadow. The inner struggle, revealed in the Battle of Armageddon, is essential for our spiritual evolution. In this battle, the true adversary is not external but resides within us. It is the ego that refuses to surrender, that fights desperately to maintain its dominion, even when the truth becomes evident. When we allow ourselves to come into contact with this internal battle, we begin to realize that every thought, every emotion, every choice we make is part of this struggle. The light we seek is not something outside of us but a presence that dwells within, waiting to be recognized and embraced. The final judgment, then, is not a punitive sentence but an opportunity for self-evaluation. It is a moment when we are invited to look within and confront the truth about ourselves. What have we done with our lives? Which choices reflected the light that we are? What do we need to let go of in order to align ourselves with our true nature? This process of revelation is fundamental to spiritual growth. By confronting our shadows, we find the possibility of transformation and renewal. The New Jerusalem, in turn, represents the state of being that emerges after this inner battle. It is the manifestation of an elevated consciousness where love, compassion, and unity prevail. It is not a physical place but an inner space where the presence of God becomes evident in our daily lives. When we allow ourselves to live in the New Jerusalem, we are living in harmony with our true essence, in a state of peace that transcends external circumstances. To dwell in eternity is to recognize that the New Jerusalem is not just a distant spiritual concept but a living, present experience. Every moment is an opportunity to come into contact with this reality. God's dwelling with His people is an experience of union with the divine that unfolds in every breath, in every act of love, in every moment of presence. This union is not limited by time or space, it is a connection that invites us to live fully, to experience the fullness of life in communion with the Creator. As we consider the Battle of Armageddon, we are called to look at the struggle that takes place within us. True spiritual transformation is not about defeating an external enemy but about recognizing and transcending the limitations of the ego. The wrath of God becomes a guide, a beacon that illuminates the path to truth and liberation. The fall of Babylon is a necessary step in this process, for it allows us to let go of the illusions that bind us and make room for the manifestation of the New Jerusalem in our lives. The inner battle that each of us faces is a reflection of the universal struggle between good and evil. Every choice we make, every thought we nurture, contributes to this battle. When we become aware of this, we can begin to make choices that align us with the light, that lead us to the New Jerusalem. This is a journey that requires courage, self-knowledge, and a deep commitment to the truth. As we approach the final judgment, we are invited to ask ourselves, what really matters? What do we carry with us on this journey? The answers to these questions will guide us toward a fuller and more meaningful life. What do we truly want to cultivate in our lives? The New Jerusalem offers us a clear vision of what is possible when we align ourselves with love and compassion. It is a state of being that is available to all of us, here and now, if we have the courage to face our shadows and allow the light to flourish. Thus, the Battle of Armageddon transforms into an invitation to transformation. Each of us is called to engage in this struggle, not with weapons or violence, but with love and understanding. The wrath of God, far from being a punitive force, is an expression of love that urges us to awaken. As we look within, we find the true essence that connects us all and guides us toward the New Jerusalem. And so, as we allow ourselves to dwell in this new consciousness, we experience the fullness of life in communion with the divine. The New Jerusalem is not just a final destination but a state of being that we can access in every moment, where the presence of God becomes evident in our daily lives. Every act of kindness, every gesture of love, brings us closer to this elevated state, where the light shines brightly and where unity is the truth that binds us. Therefore, as we contemplate the Battle of Armageddon and the wrath of God, may we remember that true transformation begins within us. May we commit to the light, release the illusions of the ego, and live in harmony with our true essence. In doing so, we become agents of change, bringing the New Jerusalem into the reality of the world. The invitation is clear: awaken, transform, and dwell in eternity, where the presence of God becomes our deepest reality. The wrath of God is a concept often misunderstood, seen as a punitive emotion stemming from anger and displeasure. However, when we contemplate the essence of this wrath, we can perceive that it manifests not as punishment but as a restorative force. Divine wrath is an expression of the need to restore order and truth in a world often submerged in illusion and darkness. It is an urgent call for human consciousness to awaken to the realities of its choices and the consequences that follow. We live in a time marked by divisions, superficiality, and an incessant pursuit of satisfaction in external things. The wrath of God, then, reveals itself as a loving impulse for us to turn inward. This transformation is essential, for it is from the understanding that our actions have repercussions that we can begin to free ourselves from the chains of the ego, which imprison us in a fragmented existence disconnected from the true essence of being. Divine wrath, therefore, is a light that shines in the darkness, an invitation to reflection and repentance, calling us to re-evaluate our paths and return to the source. When we encounter the fall of Babylon, we are confronted with a powerful symbol. Babylon represents the world system that opposes God, a reflection of the egoic mind, materialism, and the incessant pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The fall of Babylon is not an isolated event but a continuous process of dismantling the illusions that keep us from the truth. In this sense, the fall of Babylon is an invitation to liberation. As we leave behind the illusions of the world, we create space for the true essence of being to manifest within us, bringing peace and harmony. The Battle of Armageddon, often imagined as an external conflict between the forces of good and evil, is, in fact, an internal battle. This conflict is a struggle that takes place within each of us, a constant clash between light and darkness, between our true nature and the shadows of the ego that try to dominate us. True spiritual transformation occurs when we recognize and confront these shadows, when we allow ourselves to integrate the parts of us that have been denied or repressed. It is in this space of inner struggle that we find the path to enlightenment, where the true Battle of Armageddon becomes an opportunity for growth and transformation. The final judgment, often seen as a moment of condemnation, should be understood as an opportunity for self-evaluation. In this moment, we are invited to confront the truth about ourselves, to reflect on our choices and their consequences. Judgment is not a moment of terror but a revelation of truth, an alignment of the soul with its true nature. It is an invitation to purification and transformation, where what no longer serves us can be left behind, allowing the true essence of the emerging being to shine. When we arrive at the vision of the New Jerusalem, we are presented with a state of elevated consciousness where love, compassion, and unity prevail. This is not a physical city but an inner space, a state of being where the presence of God becomes evident in daily life. The New Jerusalem represents the culmination of a spiritual process, where true reality emerges from the darkness and the light of consciousness shines in all its splendor. In this state, separation disappears, and unity with the Creator is fully experienced. To dwell in eternity is to understand that the New Jerusalem is not just a place but a state of consciousness that transcends time and space. It is an experience of presence and union with the divine, where every human being can experience the fullness of life. God's dwelling with His people is revealed as a deep communion, where the separation between the human and the divine dissolves, and life is lived in its fullness, in harmony with the cosmos. As we prepare to enter the next phase of this journey, we are invited to reflect on the New Jerusalem as the manifestation of our true essence. What does it truly mean to live in an elevated state of consciousness? What is required for us to free ourselves from the chains of the ego and embrace the light that dwells within us? These questions will lead us to explore the deeper spiritual meaning of the New Jerusalem, where our true identity is revealed in all its glory and splendor. The New Jerusalem is more than a metaphor, it is a state of being that transcends the limitations of the material world and the divisions that the egoic mind creates. When we speak of the New Jerusalem, we must remember that it is not a physical location to be reached but a dimension of consciousness that becomes accessible as we detach ourselves from the illusions that keep us bound. The New Jerusalem emerges when we leave behind the inner Babylon, the one that represents attachment to the ego, materialism, and the distractions that pull us away from our true self. In this space of elevated consciousness, love is the force that unites, and compassion is the principle that guides our actions. The New Jerusalem is characterized by the absence of conflict, by the harmony that flows naturally between all beings. It is a state of unity with the divine, where the I dissolves into the totality of existence. As we contemplate this reality, we realize that true transformation does not occur as a result of external changes but as a deep internal reconfiguration. The wrath of God, often interpreted as an act of punishment, in truth, reflects a divine urgency for humanity to awaken. It is a response to the disharmony that arises when we stray from truth and the essence of love. This wrath is not an emotion but a force that seeks to restore order and truth in a world that often seems lost in confusion and despair. When we open ourselves to this understanding, we begin to see divine wrath not as a stern judge but as a loving parent who desires that their children return to the path of enlightenment. The fall of Babylon, therefore, symbolizes the collapse of egoic structures that sustain a fragmented and materialistic worldview. It is an invitation to free ourselves from the illusion of separation that prevents us from seeing the intrinsic beauty of life. Babylon, with its excesses and superficialities, represents everything that distracts us from the present, from the now. When we look at the world around us, we see the signs of this fall: rampant consumerism, the incessant pursuit of power, divisions, and hostility among human beings. Each of these elements calls for our attention, but also offers us an opportunity for reflection. The Battle of Armageddon, often imagined as a physical conflict between forces of good and evil, must be reinterpreted as the inner struggle that each of us faces. This battle is a manifestation of our desire to transcend the ego and embrace the totality of being. On the deepest level, Armageddon is the confrontation with the parts of ourselves that are still rooted in fear, anger, and ignorance. It is a call for us to become aware of our thoughts and emotions and to choose light over darkness. This battle is not something to be feared but a sacred opportunity for growth and transformation. The final judgment, often understood as a moment of condemnation, should be seen as a process of revelation. It is an invitation to look inward and evaluate our lives in the light of truth. At that moment, we are not judged by an external entity but by our own conscience. What truly matters is our ability to recognize our actions, our intentions, and their consequences. This reflection is not a burden but a blessing, as it allows us to align our essence with the truth of who we really are. And finally, the New Jerusalem becomes visible to those who are willing to enter this elevated state of consciousness. It is a state where the presence of God becomes evident in every aspect of daily life. When we live in the consciousness of the New Jerusalem, we experience life in a new way, where every moment is filled with gratitude, love, and peace. This reality is not a distant promise but an accessible possibility here and now. The New Jerusalem is not a place to be reached but a state of being that resides within us. When we allow ourselves to inhabit this dimension of consciousness, we find an eternal home that transcends time and space. It is in this sacred space that true transformation happens, where separation dissolves, and unity becomes evident. Here, every human being is invited to experience the fullness of life in communion with the Creator. As we contemplate the possibility of dwelling in the New Jerusalem, we are reminded that this experience is not just a heavenly promise but a reality that can be lived on earth. The dwelling of God with His people is an expression of divine love, where the interaction between the human and the divine reveals the beauty of creation. The New Jerusalem is, therefore, a state of consciousness that invites us to let go of what no longer serves and to embrace what is true and enduring. As we prepare for this journey of consciousness, we must be ready to face the shadows that still reside within us. Each of us carries the inner Babylon, and it is our responsibility to recognize and let go of these structures that keep us in a cycle of pain and disillusionment. This release is an act of courage and vulnerability, for it forces us to confront the truth we often fear. However, it is in this space of confrontation that we find true liberation and, eventually, the New Jerusalem. As we walk this path, we are called to be present, to anchor ourselves in the now. The past and the future are illusions that often distract us, while true power resides in the present moment. It is in this space that life unfolds, where the presence of God becomes palpable, and where we are invited to live with authenticity and love. Dwelling in eternity is, therefore, an invitation to recognize that the New Jerusalem is not just a destination but a way of being. Every interaction, every breath, every thought becomes an opportunity to experience unity with the divine. This journey is not solitary, it is a collective dance where every human being contributes to the harmony of the whole. As we near the end of this path, we are reminded that the New Jerusalem awaits us, not as a distant place but as a reality already present within us. It is a call to awaken, to open our hearts, and to allow the light to enter. The dwelling of God with His people is a promise fulfilled as we choose to live in truth and compassion. And so, as we look toward the horizon of our existence, we are invited to reflect: what does dwelling in the New Jerusalem mean to you? How can you bring this consciousness into your daily life? As we begin to explore these questions, we realize that true transformation begins within us, and that by connecting with our divine essence, we can co-create a world where peace, love, and unity reign. And thus, the journey continues, always inviting us to delve deeper into the experience of eternity, where every moment is an opportunity to live in communion with the Creator. The New Jerusalem, in its purest essence, is not just an image of a distant place or a promise of a glorious future, it is a state of being that resonates deeply within us. In the context of God's wrath and the final judgments, the New Jerusalem presents itself as a symbol of the spiritual transformation that each of us can experience as we detach from the illusions that surround us and align our consciousness with divine truth. As we explore God's wrath, it is crucial to understand that this wrath is not an expression of fury or vengeance, but rather a loving and compassionate urgency that seeks to restore order and truth. In this sense, divine wrath can be seen as a call to consciousness, an awakening that invites us to reflect on our choices and actions. As the world moves away from truth and surrenders to materialism and selfishness, this wrath becomes an instrument of purification, an invitation to confront the realities we have ignored. God's wrath, then, is not only manifested as external judgments but as an internal process of transformation. Every time we are confronted with the consequences of our actions, we have the opportunity to awaken to a new understanding. This final judgment, far from being a punitive act, is a revelation of truth that allows us to see what we truly are and what we have truly chosen to be. It is a moment of clarity, where the light of consciousness shines intensely on the shadows of the ego, revealing the illusions that keep us bound. The fall of Babylon symbolizes this liberation from illusions. Babylon represents the world system that opposes God, a manifestation of the ego and materialism that seduces us into believing that true happiness and fulfillment can be found in the external. The fall of this system is an invitation to renunciation, to the surrender of the lower self in favor of a new way of seeing and living. When Babylon falls, we are called to free ourselves from the chains that bind us and to embrace our true essence. This liberation is not an easy process. The Battle of Armageddon, often interpreted as a conflict between external forces, is, in reality, an internal struggle. Each of us carries within us both light and darkness, good and evil. Armageddon is the battle we wage within ourselves, where we confront our fears, insecurities, and attachments to the ego. By recognizing this struggle as part of our spiritual journey, we make room for transformation. When we accept responsibility for our choices and allow ourselves to feel the pain of the consequences, we begin to walk the path of true liberation. In this context, the final judgment is an opportunity for deep self-evaluation. Instead of fearing this moment, we should see it as an invitation to introspection. It is the moment when we confront the truth of who we are and what we have chosen. It is not a punitive event, but a moment of clarity, where the light of consciousness reveals the truths we often prefer to ignore. The final judgment is, therefore, a reflection of our own conscience. As we align ourselves with truth, we experience the purification necessary for the New Jerusalem to become a reality in our lives. The New Jerusalem, as a state of being, is the manifestation of this truth. It is an internal space where the presence of God becomes evident. In this state, love, compassion, and unity prevail. Here, there is no division between the sacred and the secular, for everything is seen as an expression of the divine. The New Jerusalem is an experience of wholeness, where each human being can find their true essence and live in communion with the Creator. Dwelling in eternity is, therefore, an experience of presence. The New Jerusalem is not a physical place to be reached in the future but a state of consciousness that we can cultivate here and now. When we abandon the illusions of the past and the future and anchor ourselves in the present, we begin to perceive the beauty of life that unfolds before us. Every moment becomes an opportunity to experience the fullness of life, and every interaction is transformed into an expression of divine love. In this space of elevated consciousness, we are invited to see beyond appearances and recognize the interconnectedness of all things. The New Jerusalem reminds us that we are not alone on our journey, we are part of a greater whole, where each human being is a unique expression of divinity. When we open ourselves to this truth, the experience of separation and isolation dissolves, and unity becomes evident. This transformation does not happen all at once but is a gradual process that requires patience and compassion. It is a journey of detachment, where we learn to let go of the bonds of the ego and trust in the inner wisdom that guides us. As we progress on this journey, we begin to realize that the New Jerusalem is a state of being that can be accessed at any moment, as long as we are willing to open our hearts and minds to the divine presence. Thus, the vision of the final judgment and the New Jerusalem intertwines with our own inner journey. Each of us is called to look within and confront the truths that may be uncomfortable but are essential for our spiritual growth. By doing so, we not only draw closer to the New Jerusalem but also inspire others to do the same. In this process, the wrath of God becomes a transformative force, not an obstacle to be feared. It is a reminder that truth must be revealed, that illusions must be confronted, and that true happiness and peace can only be found when we align our lives with the divine. The fall of Babylon, the Battle of Armageddon, and the final judgment are not external events but internal processes that lead us to this realization. Ultimately, the New Jerusalem is a state of consciousness that transcends time and space. It is the expression of unity with the Creator, where every human being can experience the fullness of life in communion with the divine. By dwelling in this eternity, we become co-creators of the world we wish to see, where peace, love, and compassion prevail. Thus, the New Jerusalem is not just a promise for the future but a reality that can be lived here and now, in every moment of our existence. The journey to this realization is in our hands, and the choice to awaken to this truth is the first step toward transformation.